Chapter 241, Ethan's Thrilling Actions. Ethan's daring maneuvers truly astonished many onlookers. Hermione, gripping Ginny and Luna's hands tightly, wore an expression of sheer terror. Ginny grimaced, and Luna displayed a look of discomfort, not due to Ethan's actions, but because Hermione's grip was painfully tight. Ethan's descent skillfully evaded Angelina's aggressive approach, and simultaneously, he managed to deflect a powerful bludger. Activating his psychic powers, he adeptly altered the trajectory of his broomstick. The firebolt executed a dramatic turn in midair, swooping down to catch Ethan just before he hit the ground. In the commentary box, Li Qiaodan was so astounded that he momentarily lost his ability to speak. "What a magical maneuver! Isn't this just spectacular?" It took several prods from Professor McGonagall's wand before Jordan finally exclaimed, "By Merlin's beard! What an incredible dodge! In my decades of watching Quidditch, I've never seen anything like it. I'm certain the Quidditch committee will name this move after him." Jordan's excitement was palpable, his commentary becoming disjointed in his awe of Ethan's feat, even causing Professor McGonagall to excitedly wave and shout behind him. Back on the firebolt, Ethan accelerated instantly, weaving through the opposition and charging towards the goal. Harry attempted to intercept, but was blocked by Zhang Qiu. Ethan outmaneuvered 4 Gryffindor players, Harry, Angelina, George, and Fred, in a single, fluid motion. Approaching the Gryffindor goal, goalkeeper Wood looked fierce. Witnessing Ethan's successive breakthroughs, he abandoned his post in a desperate attempt to collide with Ethan or at least force him to veer off course. However, Ethan simply tilted his broom upwards, narrowly avoiding Wood, and executed a stunning hook shot beneath the goalpost. The ball went in. Li Qiaodan, now a fervent supporter, shouted, "Ethan is the best chaser at Hogwarts." The Gryffindor stands fell silent, except for Hermione, Ginny, and Luna, who applauded from their misplaced seating. The sight of Ethan bypassing 4 players with such finesse left the Gryffindor team demoralized, particularly Captain Wood, who slapped his thigh in frustration. Seizing the moment, Cirilla, after a successful steal, quickly advanced under Roger's cover and scored. When Gryffindor's chaser, Alia Spinnet, attempted another attack and aimed to pass the ball to Angelina, Ethan intercepted it due to a misjudged throw. "Oh, oops, Ethan stole the ball again," Jordan exclaimed. Ethan, slightly bewildered by the ease of the steal, quickly regained his composure and accelerated, opting for a fast break. The steal had been so sudden that even Cirilla was caught off guard, leaving Ethan to lead the charge. Angelina, on her Nimbus 1700, attempted to intercept from the side. Failing to receive Alia's pass and momentarily losing focus, she quickly recovered and raced back to defend. Angelina, alongside Ethan and Cirilla, was undoubtedly one of Hogwarts' finest chasers, known for her sharp instincts and exceptional skills. Realizing she couldn't halt Ethan's advance, she resorted to her previous strategy, committing a deliberate foul by attempting to block Ethan's path with her broom. Meanwhile, Harry, who had been closely monitoring Ethan, positioned himself to force Ethan to slow down. Consequently, Ethan and Angelina collided once more, their broomsticks entangling at high speed, sparking a flurry of gasps from the crowd. Many young wizards stood up, their eyes glued to the sky, determined not to miss the thrilling spectacle unfolding before them. However, Ethan Green was not one to be outmaneuvered by the same tactic twice. With a swift maneuver, he raised the handle of his firebolt broom, propelling it above the Nimbus 1700. The firebolt's engines roared to life, signaling Ethan's intent to overpower his opponent with sheer force. The 2 brooms grazed each other for over 10 meters before Angelina, unable to withstand the pressure any longer, veered off, attempting to escape, the confrontation. Her and Harry's desperate defense had bought Gryffindor precious time to regroup. Fred and George quickly took their positions, ready to execute their strategy once more. With a resounding boom boom, the bludger was launched like a cannonball, its trajectory more precise than before, a testament to the twins' long hours of practice. In the face of the incoming bludger, Ethan didn't turn away. Instead, he subtly adjusted his broom's position, gripping it firmly. His body executed a 180-degree roll in midair, turning upside down as the bludger whizzed past, leaving only an afterimage. "The beautiful sloth grip roll. Such grace!" Jordan exclaimed, leaping to his feet in excitement. I'd bet this will be one of the top 10 moves today. However, his celebration was cut short as he realized the impending danger. "Oh no, Angelina, watch out!" he shouted, but it was too late. Quidditch balls, especially the bludger, are enchanted to fly autonomously, changing direction when struck to hit the intended target. Ethan had cleverly influenced its trajectory, dodging at the last moment. The bludger, continuing on its path, struck Angelina, who had been too focused on Ethan to evade in time. The impact made a sickening sound as it connected with her head. Ethan watched in dismay as Angelina was knocked off her broom and began to plummet. The crowd stood, breathless, as they watched her fall. In a critical moment, Ethan's reflexes kicked in. Like a kestrel diving for its prey, he swooped down, reaching Angelina's side in the blink of an eye. Carefully, he grabbed her robe, mindful not to tear it from the sudden force. Instead of pulling up immediately, he allowed their combined momentum to continue downward, transforming their descent into an arc. Just before hitting the ground, Ethan skillfully adjusted their trajectory, lifting Angelina to safety. "The game is suspended," announced the referee, Mrs. Pintz. This incident, occurring less than 10 minutes into the game, saw Angelina struck by George's bludger. Thankfully, Ethan saved her. Despite being the bludger's intended target, his selfless act is truly commendable. "Thank Merlin Madame Pomfrey is here," she added, inadvertently praising Ethan once more. In the stands, a few astute observers recognized Ethan's mastery over the situation. This Ethan Green had complete control over his opponent, a middle-aged wizard murmured beside Professor Dumbledore. After landing, Ethan gently placed Angelina on the ground, ensuring she was lying flat. Madame Pomfrey approached, her expression one of displeasure. "This dangerous game should not be played. Quidditch should have been cancelled long ago," she exclaimed indignantly. Ethan could only respond with a helpless look to her extreme view, feeling a mix of concern and frustration at the situation. Fortunately, Madame Pomfrey was not in a position to make decisions. She checked Angelina for a concussion and then administered a potion. Meanwhile, on the pitch, the Weasley twins were on the verge of a confrontation. George attempted to clarify that the incident was purely accidental, but Fred was convinced that George had discovered his secret relationship and was seeking revenge. What date? Are you seeing someone?" George asked, visibly confused, before quickly adding, "Explain to me clearly. Are you dating Angelina?" Realizing his slip, Fred hastily retreated on his broom. About 3 minutes later, Angelina regained consciousness. Despite Madame Pomfrey's objections, she mounted her Nimbus 1700 and soared into the air, her return boosting the Gryffindor team's morale. However, her performance was still hampered. Whenever Ethan flew past, she appeared disoriented, unsure of her next move. Without Angelina's adept defense, Harry struggled to counter Ethan and Sorella's tactics. Ravenclaw's swift passes and movements exposed gaps in Gryffindor's defense. Ethan approached Wood again, who, despite his frustration, remained vigilant, ready to anticipate Ethan's next move. Ethan, demonstrating perfect control, executed a feint and attempted a shot, which Wood impressively saved. Yet, Ethan quickly reclaimed the quaffle and attempted another shot from a difficult angle, only for Wood to make another remarkable save. The quaffle then found its way to Alia, who attempted to initiate an attack but was intercepted by Sorella, who passed it back to Ethan. George attempted to intervene from behind, but Ethan effortlessly dodged. Fred then aimed a bludger at him, but Ethan, clinging to his firebolt, evaded once more and made another dash towards Wood. This time, Wood misjudged Ethan's feint, allowing the quaffle to pass into the goal. Jordan's enthusiastic commentary filled the Quidditch pitch, praising Wood's efforts, but acknowledging Ethan's relentless offense. Ravenclaw continued to dominate with their fast-paced strategy, leaving Gryffindor struggling to keep up. The aftermath of Angelina's fall was evident. Despite her determination, her reactions were delayed, making her vulnerable to Ravenclaw's aggressive plays. Roger managed to outmaneuver her, leaving Gryffindor with no choice but to keep her in the game due to Quidditch regulations that prevent in-game substitutions except under specific circumstances. In other words, Angelina has only two options: to continue playing despite her injury or to leave the field. However, if she exits the game, Gryffindor will be left with only two chasers. Given this disadvantage, Gryffindor, even with 3 chasers, struggles to compete against the team that includes Ethan and Cyrilla from Ravenclaw. With just 2 players, defeat is inevitable. Therefore, regardless of the severity of Angelina's injury, she must continue playing. Her presence on the field, even in a diminished capacity, allows Gryffindor to maintain a fighting chance while waiting for Harry to capture the Golden Snitch. Chapter 242. Seeing that his team was being outmaneuvered by Ravenclaw's run-and-gun tactics, not only failing to hinder the opponent's attack, but also rapidly depleting their own stamina, Wood decisively reverted to their original strategy. He instructed the team to focus on defense, allowing Harry to concentrate solely on finding the Golden Snitch. Without Harry's assistance, who possessed the firebolt, Gryffindor struggled to counter the offensive prowess of the 2 firebolts. Ethan and Cyrilla, leveraging their broom's superior performance and their exceptional skills, dominated Gryffindor. The Gryffindor goal was relentlessly attacked, yet the game was far from over. Observing Gryffindor's shift to a more conservative defensive tactic, Ethan quickly signaled the Ravenclaws to adapt as well, opting for a man-to-man pick-and-roll strategy. This approach effectively disrupted Gryffindor's defense by assigning players to mark opponents closely, then frequently switching to create mismatches. This tactic left Gryffindor scrambling, often outnumbered and outplayed. Wood, however, was in exceptional form, resembling a 4-armed gorilla with his numerous saves. Despite his efforts, the sheer volume of shooting opportunities for Ethan and Cyrilla overwhelmed Gryffindor's defense. Ravenclaw's seamless teamwork exposed gaps in Gryffindor's defense, and even Wood's heroic efforts couldn't thwart every attempt. The impressive display by Ravenclaw won over many Gryffindor supporters, further demoralizing the Gryffindor team. Harry, in his desperation, ignored Ethan and Cyrilla, focusing solely on spotting the Golden Snitch. With the point difference now at 120 and only 30 points away from a 150-point gap, the Golden Snitch's 150 points could still clinch a win for Gryffindor. Despite Ravenclaw's stellar performance, Gryffindor had not lost hope. Suddenly, Harry spotted a golden glint near the Gryffindor goal, the Golden Snitch. He accelerated towards it, but Zhang Chu, deeply involved in the pick-and-roll tactics and positioned near Gryffindor's goal, moved to block his path as per her marking duties. The Golden Snitch vanished once more. Harry, not wanting to cause a conflict, slowed down, showing restraint. "Harry, this is not the time for chivalry," Wood bellowed, urging him to be more aggressive. "Knock her off her broom and catch that damn Golden Snitch." Wood's priority was clear, victory above all. Prompted by Ethan, Zhang Chu also noticed the Golden Snitch's reappearance and abandoned her role in the pick-and-roll to search for it. Harry shadowed her movements, much to her annoyance. Previously, she had been the one monitoring Harry, but now the roles were reversed. Harry's persistent following reminded Zhang Chu of the playful dynamics between a carnival dragon and its tail, 2 entities that, despite their differences, often engaged in playful chases. Sometimes the tail would even lull the dragon into sleep. In this moment, Harry's pursuit mirrored that playful, relentless chase. Ethan was quite content with the situation, but Zhang Chu only felt irritated. She glared at Harry fiercely, yet in Harry's eyes, she appeared extremely charming, her gaze seemingly seductive. Harry found it odd that despite the bright sun, it didn't reflect in her eyes. His intentions were simple. He wanted to get closer to Zhang Chu and spend time with her. Perhaps this was his way of showing affection. Of course, while trying to woo her, he remained vigilant, constantly on the lookout for bludgers and searching for the Golden Snitch. Suddenly, Harry spotted what he thought was the Golden Snitch and made a swift dive towards the ground. Zhang Chu, however, was not deceived. She continued her search in the sky, as Ethan had already informed her of the general direction of the Golden Snitch through a message, so she wasn't easily fooled. Harry, realizing Zhang Chu hadn't followed his feint, returned to his original position somewhat awkwardly. Zhang Chu mocked Harry, saying, "Harry, your acting skills are great. You almost had me fooled, just now." The wind was so strong that Harry could only catch parts of her sentence, hearing it as, "Harry, you are awesome." This misunderstanding caused Harry's face to turn red, his heart racing. He wondered if she was hinting at something, feeling a sudden rush of happiness. Meanwhile, the game intensified. Sorella intercepted Angelina and passed the quaffle to Roger, who was unguarded. Veteran Roger Davis has the ball. Is he going to score his first of the day? Jordan announced. A defensive switch occurred, with Arya being blocked by Duncan Ingleby, showcasing Ravenclaw's strategy for the day. With most of the defense focused on Ethan and Sorella, Roger only has wood to beat. Go on, shoot. But Roger, recognizing his limits, passed the ball back to Sorella instead of taking the shot. Ah, Ravenclaw is playing it too safe today, missing such opportunities, Lee Jordan exclaimed, covering his eyes in frustration. Sorella caught the quaffle, but was immediately challenged by Katie and George, who appeared out of nowhere. Take her down, George, just like you did in the dormitory. Show some spirit, Jordan shouted, earning a stern look from Professor McGonagall, who was tempted to take the microphone away. Sorry, Professor, it won't happen again, Jordan quickly apologized. Angelina joined in to pressure Sorella, who was struggling to find an opening. If Ravenclaw had any honor, they would request a postponement until she recovers. Winning under these conditions wouldn't earn my respect, Lee Jordan remarked. Sorella, undeterred, snorted. Sorry, I am a woman, not a gentleman. She managed to dodge Angelina and attempted to break through. George charged at her, aiming his bat at her broom to block her shot. However, Sorella skillfully avoided a bludger and, using the momentum, dodged George's attack from below. Despite being hit by the bat, she quickly threw the quaffle before losing balance, then performed a roll in midair to stabilize herself. Ah, isn't that too unbelievable? Can she even do that? Jordan was astonished. Oh no, Mrs. Hooch has blown the whistle for a foul by Fred, and Sorella is awarded a free throw, he continued. Sorella scores, he said disappointedly. Ravenclaw now leads by 180 points, a 140-point advantage over Gryffindor. If Harry can catch the golden snitch, the game might still go into overtime. Time was running out for Gryffindor, and Zhang Chu's heart raced with nervous anticipation. She had spotted the golden snitch near the Gryffindor side, close to the Hufflepuff stand, and immediately accelerated in pursuit. Harry, however, seemed lost in thought and did not follow. She did praise me just now, right? He wondered to himself. Oh my God, Zhang Chu seems to have spotted the golden snitch, exclaimed Lee Jordan from the commentary box. But Harry is still in a daze. Is he also suffering from a concussion like Angelina? Jordan, you committed a foul, Professor McGonagall interjected, rushing over to grab the microphone. However, her attempt was sluggish, and she moved with the lack of vigor typical of an ordinary Muggle elder, allowing Lee Jordan to easily evade her and continue his commentary, much to the audience's amusement. Clearly, he was reminding Harry on purpose. Prompted by the commentary, Harry finally snapped to attention, kicked his firebolt into gear, and began to accelerate. He and Zhang Chu, one after the other, closed in on the elusive golden snitch. As the snitch darted downwards in an attempt to escape, Zhang Chu noticed Harry taking a shortcut and gaining on it. Remembering Ethan's advice before the game, she made a split-second decision, turned her broom, and collided with Harry. The contact between their brooms produced a muffled sound as they both continued their pursuit of the snitch. With the golden snitch just meters away and the distance between them nearly equal, Zhang Chu thought of Ethan's efforts for the game and made a daring move. She stood up on her broom, let go of it, and propelled by the high-speed wind that fluttered her blue robe, she leaped towards the snitch. Harry, you lose this time, she declared, her wild smile dazzling Harry and causing him to hesitate. Lee Jordan's voice and the sound of the whistle echoed simultaneously. Ethan scored the last goal, bringing the score to 160 points. At the same time, Zhang Chu caught the golden snitch, ending the game. High above, Zhang Chu clutched the golden snitch tightly, her face lit with a satisfied smile. She had prevented Harry from catching the snitch, thus denying him the chance to turn the game around, all in an effort to aid Ethan. The risk of a hard fall seemed worth it, considering Hogwarts' magical healing capabilities. However, instead of the anticipated pain of hitting the ground, Zhang Chu found herself caught in a warm embrace. Looking up, she saw Ethan, who had been on her mind. Zhang Chu, are you okay? Ethan asked, holding her like a princess and steering the broom with his feet. How could you attempt such a risky move? It was truly breathtaking. It doesn't matter. I caught the golden snitch, Jiangchu replied with a proud grin, seemingly unfazed by her daring leap. You pushed yourself too hard for just a victory, Ethan chided gently. But it was your victory, Jiangchu whispered back. Touched by her words, Ethan steered the broom upwards, taking them out of sight. Below, Hermione stood in the Gryffindor stand, stomping her foot in frustration. Despite Ethan's win being a positive outcome, she couldn't shake off her irritation. Then, Luna's comment added to her dismay. Oh, their lips are touching, Luna observed with a telescope, watching Ethan and Jiangchu closely. It must be that woman. She's so close to Ethan, and Hermione began to harbor resentment towards Jiangchu, suspecting that she might be coercing Ethan into returning to her side to resume their relationship. The photograph captured Luna's expression, reflecting the tension of the situation. Chapter 243. Just one game was not enough for Hamish McFarlane to make a decision. However, according to Tonks, Ethan and Sorella's performance that day had genuinely impressed Hamish, as did a series of Ravenclaw tactics. Hamish was surprised to discover that the tactics employed by Ravenclaw in the game were unlike anything seen in previous Quidditch matches. It's not that players hadn't used tactics like pick and roll or run and gun before, but they had treated these more as minor skills rather than systematically integrating them into team-wide strategies. From this perspective, Hamish's interest in Ravenclaw grew, and he vowed to watch every Ravenclaw match. Furthermore, the report about this match in the Quibbler caused quite a stir, especially among Ravenclaws. The extraordinary breakthrough skills showcased led a group of Quidditch enthusiasts to marvel, with many doubting that such maneuvers were humanly possible. They speculated that the images in the Quibbler were fabricated. This was because many professional Quidditch players had attempted to replicate the move without success, given that not everyone can precisely control a broomstick without using magic. However, several young wizards who witnessed the event firsthand confirmed that Ethan had indeed executed the move. These debates sparked widespread discussion, making the Quibbler extremely popular and earning Ethan's broomstick maneuver significant attention, even from the Quidditch Committee of the International Federation of Wizards. Professor McGonagall mentioned that her friends on the Quidditch Committee were impressed by Ethan's move, noting its difficulty and effectiveness in Quidditch tactics. They inquired if she wished to register an exclusive move in Ethan's name. If successful, Ethan's maneuver would be included in the detailed explanation of Quidditch actions officially released by the Quidditch Committee and named after him. Professor McGonagall sought Ethan's opinion on this matter, knowing that if the certification was completed before the national Quidditch team selection, it would significantly boost his chances. In the days that followed, Ethan dedicated himself not only to preparing for every Quidditch match, but also to another task, organizing the magic books collected in the tower and those stored in the memory bank of his brain from the Hogwarts library. The vast number of magic books acquired from Sirius necessitated a systematic sorting due to the library's considerable size. During this process, Ethan embarked on a project he had long contemplated, formally integrating the spell system of the Harry Potter world into the arcane magic system. This idea had taken root when he first learned arcane magic, but grew more compelling this semester as he systematically taught arcane magic to others in the erudite society. He realized the difficulty many young wizards faced in studying two magic systems simultaneously, which could hinder their progress in learning arcane magic. Fortunately, the theory of arcane magic was inclusive, and the foundational layers of the two magic systems were similar, making the integration feasible despite the substantial workload. Consequently, Ethan spent most of his free time on this endeavor, methodically cataloging the Black family's collection into his mental library and then organizing the books within his mind's library. With the simplest books related to magic at his disposal, Ethan reconstructs them based on arcane magic principles. He then categorizes them using the scribe spell. Essentially, he is undertaking the monumental task of creating a Yongle Dadian or Sikuquanshu for the magical world. This endeavor, vast and complex, will undoubtedly consume a significant amount of time to complete fully. However, its significance cannot be overstated. Once finished, This converted knowledge will serve as the cornerstone of the new magical civilization Ethan envisions. Of course, Ethan does not expect to complete this series of work quickly, nor does he plan to devote all his time to IT. His initial goal is to adapt some core content, such as the Hogwarts textbooks, expanded spells, and dark magic. These adaptations will be provided to the Erotic Society and his studious friends. The acquisition of more in-depth knowledge can proceed at a more leisurely pace. As March arrives, bringing cloudless days and warmer weather, most people yearn to enjoy ice-cold pumpkin juice outside the castle, play gobstone, or watch the giant squid lazily swim in the lake. However, such leisure is a luxury Ethan cannot afford. He spends his free time completing coursework and adapting core magical knowledge, which consumes nearly all his available time. For Ethan, attending classes and absorbing simple knowledge feels like a form of relaxation. Unlike Ethan's seemingly relaxed demeanor in class, other young wizards find themselves under pressure. Perhaps influenced by the senior students' intense exam preparations, the professors have loaded the students with homework, leaving them no choice but to stay inside the castle. They strain to concentrate, trying their best to ignore the tempting warm breeze wafting through the windows. Cirilla and Penello are also swamped with work, focusing on passing the NEWT, nastily exhausting wizarding test, the highest academic qualification in the wizarding world. Aspiring aurors must achieve at least 5 excellent or good grades on these exams. Consequently, Penello's blonde curly hair, usually meticulously styled, is now casually tied back, lending her an air of intellectual beauty. She finds herself envying Cirilla's practical short haircut. Between the heavy coursework, reorganizing and adapting the knowledge system, and Quidditch training, even someone as resilient as Ethan feels physically and mentally drained by day's end. The workload is indeed formidable. Chapter 2 of 44, On the Last Day of March. On the last day of March, Ethan completed another day of arduous work. He finally finished the reconstruction and adaptation of Miranda Gorshak's standard spells for grades 1 to 7. He estimated it would take another week to adapt the most mainstream spell books, including the Book of Spells, Magic Theory, The Fifth Element, Exploration, Charm Achievements, A Guide to Medieval Witchcraft, Selected Spells of the 18th Century, and Forgotten Ancient Magic and Spells. Ethan discovered that, despite the seemingly daunting task, the work was not as difficult as he had anticipated. This was because there was a significant amount of repetitive content across the various books. For instance, all the spells in Standard Spells were also found in the Book of Spells, with the additional content in Standard Spells being summaries of magic theory. By adapting the Book of Spells, he realized that he wouldn't need to adapt more than half of the content from the other spell books. Similarly, books like Magic Potions and Potions, Advanced Potion Making, and Thousands of Miraculous Herbs and Mushrooms, which focus on herbalism, magical zoology, potions, and alchemy, were simpler to adapt. These books primarily documented phenomena and practical operations, containing less theoretical content, and consequently requiring fewer adaptations. Ethan planned to categorize the contents of these books after completing the basic adaptation work. He intended to compile them into a series of books, using Yongle Dodian or Encyclopedia Britannica as the standard reference. The series would be divided into 2 parts, Magic and Encyclopedia illustrations, named Book of All Laws and Book of All Things. However, this was a project for the future. For now, he had to focus on completing his potions class homework, the only subject besides the history of magic for which he still had to do homework. Due to Ethan's exceptional grades, most Hogwarts professors had granted him the privilege of being exempt from homework. The sole exception was Binns, the ghost professor of the history of magic, who was too old-fashioned to make exceptions. Snape was another matter. Ethan suspected the professor's insistence on homework was a form of revenge for a past incident in the Humping Willow Tunnel. Nevertheless, being exempt from homework was a privilege, and Ethan couldn't complain about the exceptions. As a student, he had no choice but to head to the library and complete his homework as usual. The library was a popular spot among studious young wizards. The seats were often filled with diligent students, their tables cluttered with books and parchment. Some even reserved seats with water glasses, quills, and other items, a common practice even at Hogwarts. Wandering through the library, Ethan spotted several familiar figures in a remote corner, engaged in a whispered discussion. Cyrilla, having sat for a long time, straightened her waist and stretched, smiling and waving Ethan over when she saw him. Ethan found an empty seat between her and Penelo and sat down. "Ethan, you're here too." Hermione, buried under a mountain of books, looked up and greeted him with tired eyes. The girls cleared some space on the table for Ethan. In the process, Hermione accidentally dropped a book titled New Principles of Divination. Ethan quickly picked it up, noting that it was also on his list for basic adaptation. The textbook Ethan planned to use for this semester was Number Divination and Graphics. New Principles of Divination might take a year or two to master. It was surprising to see her already delving into this book. She truly was a diligent student. "Thank you, Ethan," Hermione sighed, accepting the book. "Ethan, this weekend marks another club class. I'm concerned you won't have enough time to prepare the class content. Should we pause training to focus on preparing for the final exams?" Penelo, seated to Ethan's right, suggested with a furrowed brow. "This is a mistake," he countered. "At Hogwarts, we face final exams annually, and the seniors have their graduation exams. The finals are still a while away. If we halt training now, what was the point of our scholarly pursuits?" Jaina's plan to expand her influence in the Ministry of Magic was nearing its launch. She needed Ethan to recruit talents for her now more than ever. How could they possibly suspend the Academy of Knowledge's courses at such a critical time? But if the course continues, even if you can manage, other wizards might not be able to keep up, Penelo argued. The issue indeed needed addressing. Perhaps we could slightly modify some of the courses to lessen the learning burden on members instead of increasing it, Ethan pondered aloud. Maybe we could make the Basho Society's system more specific and the division of labor clearer, allowing everyone to relax a bit, Hermione suggested, pausing her writing. Ethan nodded in agreement. Delegating responsibilities was indeed an effective solution to manage the workload, a lesson he had learned firsthand. Nowadays, whenever Ethan taught a class, Penelo was the one who ended up most exhausted. "Oh, so you have some grand ideas?" Penelo raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical of the young witch's input. After all, most of the Erudite Society's systems had been established by her for Ethan. Yet, Hermione had not only joined the core team of the Erudite Society immediately, but also suggested the class division, leading to the first major restructuring based on her ideas. This made Penelo feel threatened, viewing Hermione as a cunning woman aiming to usurp her position. "Come on, Penelo," Sorella interjected, clapping her hand as a reminder. As one of the witches closest to Ethan, she had spent an entire summer with Hermione and knew her well. Despite Hermione's intelligence, she lacked guile in interpersonal relations, focusing more on tasks than on people. Sorella believed Penelo's concerns were unfounded. "Okay, fine. Let's hear what Miss Know-It-All has to say," Penelo conceded, even with Sorella's support for Hermione. Unaware of the student union president's initial resistance, Hermione spoke earnestly. After the serious incident, the Erudite Society gained a new wave of members, expanding its reach throughout the school. Our previous shift to a class division method was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't sufficient. We need more managers and a set of standardized institutional processes. Ethan, having expressed his desire for Hermione to take over the administrative duties of the Erudite Society after Penelo's departure, nodded in agreement. Hermione had evidently made progress after immersing herself in Muggle management books. Then, "Okay, let's revise the rules again. The day of class is approaching quickly, and we need to finalize this before then," Penelo said, glancing at Ethan and making a decisive call. Ethan was the true heart of the Erudite Society. With his approval, Penelo had no further objections, not wanting to diminish his goodwill. Each wizard present was extraordinary, and as a genius recognized throughout Hogwarts, Ethan's leadership was undisputed. Ethan's intelligence and thinking abilities are exceptional. Cyrilla, being a princess, has benefited from a royal education, which has endowed her with a broad vision and keen insight. Penelope Clivet, having been appointed as the fourth-year prefect and the president of the Female Student Council, possesses outstanding organizational skills and a wealth of experience. Hermione Granger, the top student in Gryffindor, is known for her rigorous logical thinking and her proficiency in witchcraft. Together, the four of them embarked on an intensive collaboration. They gathered in the library, where they engaged in hushed discussions, meticulously reviewing and revising their work. Their efforts continued until the library was about to close. By then, they had finalized the new rules, which they proudly displayed on a large piece of parchment. Chapter 245, New Rules and Regulations for the Polytechnic Society. Before class on Saturday, all members of the Polytechnic Society were briefed on the new rules and regulations. Among these, the structure of personnel drew the most attention. At the helm of the Academy of Knowledge is the president, who bears full responsibility for all training-related matters. The president has the ultimate authority and does not need to consult other members for decisions. The vice president, also known as the chairman, is the second in command within the society and acts as the president's deputy. The chairman's primary responsibilities include organizing specific activities of the society. In the president's absence, the chairman has the authority to oversee weekly courses. Additionally, the chairman is tasked with forming a team of secretaries to manage accounts, collect annual membership fees, pay bills, and report the income and expenditure to all members. Below the chairman is the minister, who oversees a separate department, each with its specific tasks. The Human Resources Department handles recruitment, record-keeping, and expulsion of personnel. The Propaganda Department manages the society's image. The Discipline Inspection Department ensures internal discipline and classroom safety. The Logistics Department oversees the society's books, materials, teaching materials, and other financial matters. And the Curriculum Department is responsible for venue layout, classroom arrangements, and logistics management for each course. Each class has its director, and these ministers also serve as members of the council. In the president's absence, the chairman collaborates with them to form a board of directors, with the acting president managing all internal affairs of the society. After Penelo outlined the positions, the young wizards' eyes lit up with eagerness. It seemed they too had the opportunity to participate in the society's management, fostering a stronger sense of belonging. Levin Green will continue as the president. Who is in favor and who is against it? Penelo asked from the podium, surveying the audience. Everyone raised their hands in support. No one objected. It was clear that Ethan Green, having founded the society and undertaken all initial investments and teaching content, was the undisputed choice for president. Penelo then yielded the podium to Ethan, who stepped up and expressed his gratitude. As the president of the Polytechnic Society, I want to thank you all for joining. Your membership signifies your trust and support. Our goal is to disseminate knowledge widely, enabling everyone to progress. The establishment of this management team allows for your participation in the society's management. After all, you best understand your needs. This way, the Polytechnic Society can better serve everyone and ensure our courses run smoothly, Ethan explained, capturing the undivided attention of the young wizards. He then announced the first director of the society as Miss Penelope Clivet, with Miss Hermione Granger as the director of the personnel department, Miss Padma Patil heading the propaganda department, and Miss Zhang Chu in charge of the logistics department. Ministers would designate members of each department, and the secretariat members would be appointed by the chairman. The person responsible for each class would be appointed by the chairman after the election of 3 candidates. Ethan made the decision personally, without any recommendations. No one among the young wizards in the society found this unusual, and all eyes turned expectantly to Penelo. Following this, each minister selected their deputies accordingly. Penelo, albeit reluctantly, appointed Luna to the secretariat. In her view, while Luna's personal abilities were commendable, her often distracted and eccentric demeanor made her a questionable choice for the role. However, since this was Ethan's wish, Penelo refrained from voicing her objections. Under the new system, administrative work was significantly reduced, allowing the young wizards to receive more tailored assistance. Ethan promptly revised the curriculum, halving the standard course load and converting the remaining time into intensive exam preparation sessions. The top students from Class 3 were redistributed into Classes 1 and 2 for specialized tutoring in various subjects, which proved to be highly popular. For the students in Class 3, Ethan provided adapted Hogwarts textbooks, successfully blending arcane theory with the Hogwarts curriculum. This integration greatly enhanced their learning experience, deepening their understanding and mastery of the material. After class, Ethan unexpectedly asked several girls to stay behind. This group included Cirilla, Penelo, Hermione, Jiangchu, and Luna. Except for Penelo, who was Cirilla's close friend and had plans to join Gianna's staff after graduation, the others had somewhat ambiguous relationships with him. Despite Penelo's outward claims of Ethan being an outsider who had stolen her best friend, their relationship had noticeably warmed since the establishment of the training class. Cirilla, noticing who Ethan had asked to stay, teased him about potentially inciting a rivalry among the girls for his affection. Ethan, however, dismissed the idea, explaining that he wanted to discuss their future careers and goals to encourage their involvement. Our goal? Are you planning to discuss building a floating city or opening a portal to another world? Cirilla asked, her initial annoyance turning to surprise upon hearing Ethan's plans. Exactly. They've agreed that I should seek out more potential allies, Ethan confirmed, adding that while his ambitions were grand, the immediate focus would be on combating Voldemort. Ethan outlined a three-part plan. The first step involved gaining control of the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts through their efforts against Voldemort. The second step was to promote Ethan's arcane magic theory, starting with Hogwarts, to revolutionize magical civilization and construct the first floating city. The final step would leverage the influence of the entire magical civilization to open a portal to another world, fulfilling their plan to return home. This return, Ethan emphasized, would be a triumphant one, akin to the return of the Dragon King. If the Boshu Society represented Ethan's strategy to sow the seeds of magical civilization among a broad base, then the girls before him were his chosen core team. They were to play pivotal roles similar to those of Jaina, Tonks, Onyxia, and Cirilla, among others, in realizing his vision. Ethan's plan was met with silence from Cirilla, but that didn't mean the others lacked opinions. Hermione, upon seeing the group that had chosen to stay, felt a twinge of discomfort. Jiangchu, who had recently entered into a closer relationship with Ethan, chose to remain neutral, not wanting to stir any trouble. Luna, on the other hand, already considered Ethan her boyfriend and was less concerned about the dynamics within the group. Penelo was simply happy to be near Ethan, indifferent to how many others shared her sentiment. Ethan, observing the 5 witches before him, each unique in appearance and personality, yet equally talented and beautiful, felt like the protagonist of a dating simulation game. Shaking off such fanciful thoughts, he turned the conversation to more serious matters. He began by discussing the potential return of the Dark Lord, using a prophecy as a pretext without revealing the full extent of his knowledge about the visitors from another world. So is this the real reason you established the Erudite Society? To enhance our abilities so we can protect ourselves when the Dark Lord returns? Hermione asked, her excitement evident. She had always believed in Voldemort's return and was impressed by Ethan's foresight. In her eyes, Ethan's stature grew, nearly rivaling Dumbledore's in terms of greatness. Penelo connected the dots, realizing the importance of their post-graduation plans to become Aurors. Jiangqiu, though initially frightened at the mention of the Dark Lord, offered Ethan a look of support. Luna, with her eyes wide with curiosity, eagerly asked what they needed to do next. Ethan, pleased with their trust, outlined his plan to grant them access to his home, where he stored all his accumulated knowledge and wealth, including methods to rapidly enhance their strength. He emphasized the importance of secrecy, insisting that what they learned and obtained must not be shared with anyone, not even their closest family. Hermione and Cirilla were already aware of Ethan's demi-plane tower, but his emphasis on secrecy was primarily for the benefit of Jiangqiu, Luna, and Penelo. Penelo, thrilled at the prospect of accessing Ethan's collection, vowed to keep everything a secret, suggesting even a magical contract to ensure their silence. Jiangchu agreed, seeing the value in sharing a secret with Ethan, though she lamented the number of others involved. This conversation marked a pivotal moment, deepening the bond between Ethan and the group as they prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead with a newfound sense of unity and purpose. Ethan observed the reactions of his companions closely. Luna, with her eyes half closed, gave him a nod, her demeanor serene. However, Ethan noticed a telltale sign of her nervousness. Her ears had turned red. Taking into account the varied expressions of the three individuals before him, Ethan made a decisive choice in his heart and proceeded to open the portal that lay in front of them. As the new month dawns, I find myself eagerly seeking your support. I invite you to engage with this journey by offering your customizations, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, and rewards. Your votes are incredibly valuable to me as the author of this tale. Your support is not just appreciated, it's crucial for the continuation and growth of our story together. Chapter 246. It hadn't been long since Ethan mastered the 7th level spell. Except for Cirilla, this was the first time the girls had witnessed Ethan use the portal. Their surprise was evident. They were familiar with apparition, had used flue powder, and even experienced portkeys, but they had never encountered such a convenient spatial spell. Led by Ethan and Cirilla, the group of 6 stepped through the portal and entered the tower. Penelo was particularly curious about Ethan's home. She had always been eager to see where Ethan and Cirilla lived. However, today's main focus was the tower's true secret. With a mix of curiosity and a touch of excitement, they followed Ethan to the tower's underground area, where his workshop, library, and storage were located. The sight that greeted Jiangchu, Luna, and Penelo completely redefined their understanding. They knew Ethan had become wealthy after the 1st grade, but they hadn't anticipated the extent of his riches. His wealth and collection surpassed even those of pure-blood families. For young wizards from ordinary families, a fraction of this wealth would require a lifetime of work, a library rivaling that of Hogwarts, vaults brimming with gold and galleons, storage rooms filled with precious materials, Ethan's various creations, a treasure trove of alchemical products and potions, a workshop equipped with rare experimental apparatuses, not to mention the greenhouses with magical plants and a vast forest. Ethan had even started to purchase magical animals for breeding. Everywhere they looked was a revelation. Finally, Ethan led the astonished young witches back to the lobby on the 1st floor. With a flick of his wand, ice-cold sodas and sweet, delicious macarons materialized on the table. "Eat," he said. "After you've eaten, I have some gifts for you." Once the girls had calmed down, Ethan revealed, "The first gift I want to give you is the key to come and go from here as you please." As he spoke, Ethan took Cirilla's arm and began to inscribe a pattern on the back of her hand with his wand. Soon, a magical tattoo symbolizing intellect appeared. "Is this somewhat similar to the dark mark used by the Death Eaters under Voldemort?" Cirilla asked. Planning to join the Aurors after graduation, she had researched the history of the previous Wizarding Wars extensively. "You're right, but it's more than that," Ethan explained while tattooing the pattern on Hermione. "I did take inspiration from the dark mark, but I've also integrated magic tattoo technology. Its essence combines enchantment technology from alchemy, leaving it permanently on the skin to bestow new magic. This mark has the same sensing function as the dark mark, but it can do more. For example, I've bound the magic of mansion magic to this tattoo. By channeling magic into the tattoo, you can travel to and from this tower. It also serves as an identification mark. With this tattoo, you can access most of the tower's functions, like opening various storage rooms. Specific permissions can be updated as needed." After receiving her tattoo, Penelo observed, "But this is really similar to the dark mark. With this, I feel like I've joined a secret organization, like Ethan Green and his girlfriends." "What kind of terrible name is that?" Ethan complained, finding the suggestion too blunt. After a moment's thought, he proposed, "I think this symbol should be called the intellectual mark and the organization, the Genius Club." Hermione, examining the mark, commented, "It doesn't look evil. I like the name Intellect. But there's something more to it, isn't there?" Even the brightest minds like Hermione couldn't help but blush at the mention of the Genius Club. After everyone had their intellectual symbol tattooed, Ethan waved his wand, and a neatly arranged set of 6-color potion bottles appeared on the table. These were the permanent elixirs, designed to comprehensively enhance one's abilities in various aspects: strength, agility, durability, intelligence, perception, and charm, with each color representing a different attribute. After taking one, you'll need to wait a certain period before consuming the next, Ethan explained. He recommended starting with the Permanent Intelligence Elixir, confident it would help them ace their final exams, even Penello's NEWs. Ethan handed out the potions to everyone except Cyrilla. Penello, realizing why Cyrilla had learned so quickly after Christmas, exclaimed, "So you drank this secretly and didn't even tell me about it." She then drank the intelligence elixir without hesitation, trusting Ethan completely. Hermione, recalling her extensive reading on potions, knew of temporary wisdom-enhancing potions, but had never heard of permanent ones. Nonetheless, she didn't hesitate to drink the elixir. Jiang Chu, feeling her talents were modest compared to the others, was eager for the boost, while Luna's interest lay more in the potions themselves than their effects. After tasting the potion, they all felt a surge in mental power, understanding why Ethan had named it the Genius Club. With these elixirs, even ordinary individuals could become geniuses. "Now, take out your wands. I have a third gift for you," Ethan continued. He had been collecting fairy silver to craft various magical items, including the Arcane Sword 3.0 for Cyrilla, and a wand plus wrist set that Jaina and Tonks found intriguing. He decided to customize a batch of fairy silver wands and sleeve wrist guards for the girls as a welcoming gift. These items not only enhanced spellcasting abilities, but also had the ability to store magic and prevent disarming without leaving any trace. To Ethan's surprise, what caught the attention of Jiang Chu, Hermione, and Penello the most was not the wand, but the sleeve bracer. They found the device cool and innovative, reminiscent of the hidden blade from Assassin's Creed. Luna, on the other hand, treasured the wooden corks from the empty potion bottles, adding them to her butterbeer cork necklace. "There's one more very important thing," Ethan warned seriously. "To ensure the secrets here remain safe, you must learn occlumency, psychic barrier, mechanized mind, and other spells to counter mind detection as soon as possible. This is your top priority." He advised them to steer clear of Dumbledore and Snape, both masters of legilimency, especially Dumbledore, who could perform legilimency without spells or wands. Ethan recommended starting with mechanized mind, a relatively simple spell with only 2 levels, which, when activated, could significantly enhance mental defenses. Ethan's expression was particularly solemn as he spoke. Your own thinking must be cold and rational, effectively preventing others from prying into your will. Although the Dumbledore that the young witches admired seemed unlikely to be associated with villains, the hidden dangers of legilimency could not be ignored. Ethan harbored many secrets, and it was better that fewer people knew about them. "Finally, regarding the results of my current work," Ethan said, taking out a stack of books and placing them in front of the girls. They were a set of Standard Charms, the Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, Intermediate Transfiguration, and Advanced Transfiguration guides. I am currently focusing on integrating our existing spell system into the theoretical framework of arcane magic. I have completed the adaptation of the spells and transfiguration textbooks. If you're interested, you can take a look. Not only will this provide a deeper understanding of magic, but it will also be beneficial for learning arcane magic. The girls eagerly began to peruse the new editions of the textbooks Ethan had placed before them, showing genuine interest. Ethan continued, "In the coming days, I will adapt all the most mainstream and common magic books, and the results will be available in the tower. You can come and see them at any time. If necessary, you can make a copy for yourself. I remember there is a printer with scribes and scholars touch enchantments in the study. In addition, I'll later compile all the arcane magic I have mastered into a book called The Book of All Laws to facilitate your self-study. But please, keep this information to yourselves and don't disclose it to others without authorization." After a long conversation with Ethan, the girls left the tower and returned to Hogwarts. It was already dark by the time the 6 of them made their way back to their respective dormitories. Hermione, being the only Gryffindor, had to go back alone. Ethan returned to the Ravenclaw common room with the 4 girls and waved goodbye. Although Ethan would soon have to start a new day's work, he felt much more relaxed after the sleepless night. He had successfully drawn a few talented young witches into his endeavors. In the future, these witches, each with their unique talents, would undoubtedly provide him with significant assistance. Chapter 247. As March gave way to April, the warm breezes of spring had thoroughly dispelled the last vestiges of cold. The weather began to heat up, heralding the approach of summer. Ethan's progress in adapting the core magic books was unfolding as he had anticipated. The adaptation of subjects such as magical zoology, herbalism, potions, and alchemy proved to be much simpler than others. Ethan managed to complete these tasks within a week. However, when it came to documenting arcane magic, he encountered significant challenges. His goal was not only to record the arcane magic he had mastered, but also to enable readers to learn and master these spells independently based on the book's content. This task ventured into the realm of education, far beyond merely mastering a handful of spells. Ethan had to consult various teaching materials and explain each arcane magic casting technique, key points, and common mistakes in a manner that was both simple and easy to understand. This endeavor tested not only his magical skills, but also his ability to teach. Fortunately, Ethan had amassed considerable teaching experience in the literary society, which helped him navigate this challenge. Nevertheless, this task significantly increased his workload. Despite his exceptional cognitive abilities and the assistance of the scribe skill, Ethan found himself expending a great deal of energy on this project daily. The Arcane Master profession, at level 190, grants the ability to automatically master all core spells upon leveling up. The number of spells within the arcane magic system, even just the core spells, was vast and complex. By comparison, in the Harry Potter world, Miranda Sheggock's standard spells records fewer than 10 spells per book, totaling about 60 spells from 1st to 7th grade. Ethan's Book of Spells aimed to include around 100 spells, a fraction of what arcane magic encompasses. For level 1 spells alone, Ethan had to document over 100. If he were to record all spells from level 0 to level 7, the total would exceed 1,000, surpassing the entire repertoire of spells known in the Harry Potter world today. Ethan's dream of compiling the Book of All Laws was proving to be a monumental task. After documenting the last level 1 prophecy spell, Ethan completed his work that morning. Following a quick lunch, he dragged his weary body to the afternoon spells class. Despite feeling dizzy, he successfully cast the Happiness Curse, eliciting a genuine smile from Steve. Ethan had categorized the Happiness Curse as a level 1 control spell, challenging for many young wizards to cast. The difference between a forced smile and one from the heart was significant, as demonstrated by Antony's overacted, hysterical laughter during class, which led to a quiet time session with Professor Flitwick. After class, Ethan eagerly returned to his dormitory, collapsing into his soft bed with plans to nap before dinner to rejuvenate. His extreme exhaustion ensured he fell asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. When he awoke, it was pitch dark outside, and he realized he had missed dinner. Not wanting to wait in the kitchen for a house elf, he activated the mansion technique and returned to the tower. The tower had become a frequent gathering place for Jaina, Tonks, and Onyxia, especially after Ethan had drawn intellectual marks for them. To accommodate their visits, he made sure to stock up on plenty of snacks. Pastries and drinks will be left in the tower. If you're lucky, you might be able to enjoy the food they left behind. Once inside the tower, Ethan could immediately smell the aroma of food. At a glance, he saw the feast laid out on the table in the hall. Sherbet, tomato scrambled eggs, twice-cooked pork, a mix of 3 delicacies, braised pork ribs, and even mapo tofu. A whole table filled with Chinese cuisine made Ethan rub his eyes in disbelief, wondering if he had somehow returned to his home in his previous life. Tonks was familiar only with English and French cuisine, while Jaina and Onyxia specialize in Azeroth cuisine. They had never encountered Pandaria's culinary delights. Thus, there was only one person who could have prepared this array of Chinese dishes. Ethan turned around and saw a dark-haired girl with a beautiful figure, a pretty face, and an oriental grace sitting on the sofa, smiling at him. It was Zhang Chu. "Ethan, I guessed you missed dinner since I didn't see you in the auditorium earlier." "It seems I was right," Zhang Chu said, her cheeks flushed with joy. "Did you prepare all these dishes?" Ethan asked, smiling. Yes. The food at Hogwarts mainly consists of French, Italian, and British cuisine, and dishes from the Dragon Country have never appeared. I thought you might miss food from your hometown, so I spent a lot of time learning these recipes with my mother during the summer vacation," she explained, her delicate fingers intertwined. Ethan was deeply touched. The meal struck a chord in his heart. He eagerly approached the table and devoured the dishes. Zhang Chu sat beside him the entire time, watching him enjoy his meal with a smile, occasionally taking a small bite herself. Every bite Ethan took was the best reward for her efforts. "Zhang Chu?" Ethan suddenly looked up and said softly. Zhang Chu tilted her head in confusion, looking at Ethan. Her soft black hair slipped from her temples, enhancing her beauty. "You have a little bit here." Ethan tapped the corner of his mouth. Zhang Chu stretched out her slender fingers, mimicking Ethan's movements, and lightly touched the corner of her mouth. "Well, a little further to the left," Ethan pointed out, indicating she had missed the spot. Zhang Chu stood up, approached Ethan, and sat down next to him. She took Ethan's finger and pressed it to her face, asking, "This is it?" Ethan could feel the delicate and soft skin under his fingertips and took a deep breath. Understanding her gesture, he thought it best to follow his desires. "Forget it. Seeing how clumsy you are, I'll clean it up myself," he said, holding her head gently with both hands and removing the rice crumbs himself. He remembered an ancient poem about the value of every grain of rice on the plate, reflecting hard work. As someone from the Dragon Kingdom, Ethan detested wasting food, a sentiment Zhang Chu shared. Thus, during the second half of their meal, they took turns cleaning up the leftovers on each other's faces, necks, and other areas, eager to finish their meal without wasting a single bite. Chapter 248. Ethan and Zhang Chu spent an hour finishing their dinner. Afterward, they cuddled on the sofa, enjoying each other's company. "You must be exhausted, skipping dinner like that," Zhang Chu said softly, hugging Ethan's arm. "Indeed, writing a book all day is quite tiring," Ethan sighed. "Is that so?" Zhang Chu gazed at him with affection. She understood that behind his complaints of fatigue, Ethan was crafting a masterpiece. His work, once completed and published, promised to revolutionize the world, especially the magical community. It was nothing short of groundbreaking. Yet, as Ethan's girlfriend, she felt helpless in supporting his academic endeavors, despite having consumed the permanent intelligence elixir. "Let me help you relax," Zhang Chu suggested, taking Ethan's arm and guiding him upstairs with her graceful steps. Ethan, curious about her intentions, followed her to his room. In the tower where they resided, each had their own suite, personalized to their taste. Ethan's financial and magical contributions had transformed these spaces. Opening the door, Ethan was greeted by an antique Chinese-style bedroom, beautifully divided into a study and a sleeping area by a wooden screen with intricate carvings. The study was a harmonious blend of art and tranquility, featuring a mahogany desk, landscape paintings, exquisite tea sets, and shelves filled with the scent of ink. An elegant incense burner added a serene atmosphere to the room. "I've always wanted a room like this. Thank you for making it possible," Zhang Chu expressed her gratitude, showing Ethan around. Behind the screen, 2 beds were revealed, a luxurious Ming Dynasty canopy bed, replicated from a design in the Palace Museum, and a more delicate imperial concubine's couch, prepared for relaxation. "You can take off your clothes," Zhang Chu suggested at the right moment. "Take off." "My clothes?" Ethan hesitated, his heart racing at the thought. Yet he complied, removing his shirt to reveal his toned physique, which made Zhang Chu blush at the sight. It was her first time seeing a man's body so closely. "It's beautiful," she thought to herself. Ethan, now holding his pants, hesitated. "Do you want me to continue?" "For now, this is fine. Please, lie down," Zhang Chu said, barely containing her excitement. "Lie down?" Ethan was momentarily confused, wondering if he had misunderstood her intentions. Nevertheless, wanting to appreciate her kindness, he obediently lay on the imperial concubine's couch. Suddenly, his world went dark as a fragrant robe was draped over him. Ethan's keen sense of smell detected a complex blend of scents, including agarwood, mugwort leaves, and a variety of spices, enveloping him in a comforting aroma. The scent was unmistakable. It was the fragrance of the sachet Jiangqiu wore on her robe. Ethan recalled that she had been carrying a sachet every day since last year, emitting a captivating, indescribable aroma. Suddenly, it dawned on him that this was Jiangqiu's scent. At that moment, Ethan felt a shiver of excitement. A gentle hand was caressing his back, offering what seemed like a massage. However, it was merely a light touch that eventually focused on his latissimus dorsi, scratching slightly harder than before. This was not a massage. It felt more like a playful tease. Am I being teased? Ethan wondered. It seemed natural for young girls to be curious about boys' muscles. Soon, Jiangqiu seemed to realize her approach might have been too forward, and the nature of her touch changed. A cool, slippery sensation spread down Ethan's spine, making him hum in response. Was it peppermint essential oil? He felt Jiangqiu's fingers move gently and quietly to his neck, where the cool touch of the essential oil, combined with a moderate pressure, quickly soothed his entire neck. This massage technique was something I learned from my mother over the Christmas vacation, specifically to help you relieve fatigue, Jiangqiu explained shyly. Ethan was touched to learn that she had acquired this skill from her moth, Air, who was evidently skilled in various crafts, from cooking Chinese food to knitting. He wondered what Jiangqiu's mother would think upon discovering the reason behind her daughter's eagerness to learn. Jiangqiu's techniques, indeed, seemed very professional. She applied gentle pressure with her soft fingertips, swirling them in circles on Ethan's neck before moving up to his scalp and temples. The pressure increased slightly, providing a stronger stimulation that helped alleviate the day's fatigue. Gradually, her fingers moved down, lightly brushing from the back of his neck to his lower armpits in a soothing rhythm. Despite the initial cool touch, Ethan felt his body warming up, unable to distinguish between sweat and essential oil as the couch beneath them became damp. Eventually, the massage slowed, and Ethan felt a weight pressing on his back, signaling the end of the massage and the beginning of a different kind of exercise. Ethan turned over, ready to engage in a workout that had been postponed at the dinner table. They moved their activities to the canopy bed, which offered more space and height. Using the wood-plastic technique, Ethan effortlessly transformed it into a dumbbell rack. Jiangqiu attempted to join in the exercise, but her delicate constitution led to a minor injury, and the dumbbell rack was accidentally stained with blood. Thus, Ethan continued the workout alone, appreciating the stability of the dumbbell rack he had created with his transformation technique. If his skills had been any less refined, the rack would have creaked under the strain of the vigorous exercise. About an hour later, as Ethan was finishing his second set of push-ups and preparing for squats, they heard footsteps approaching. "Jiangqiu, someone is coming." They quickly stood up, helping each other tidy their disheveled clothes. Despite their haste, Ethan noticed one of his socks was missing, likely lost in the commotion. However, there was no time to search for it. As they heard a knock on the door, Jiangqiu quickly composed herself, taking deep breaths to appear normal. "Please come in," she called out calmly. In the moments before the door opened, they dashed to the desk, attempting to appear as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Ethan and Jiangqiu sat solemnly on the taishi chairs, surrounded by a dense, innocent vapor on the floor, silent witnesses to the events that had just unfolded. "Hey, Ethan, you're in this room? Is this Jiangqiu?" It was Tonks. She blinked in surprise upon seeing the two seated side by side on the sofa. "Yes, this is my senior sister in Ravenclaw, Jiangqiu. We were discussing the ancient books of the Dragon Kingdom in her room," Ethan explained seriously, holding up the Baopuzi with an earnest look in his eyes. "Hello, Sister Jiangqiu. I am Nymphadora Tonks, Ethan's sister. I apologize for not realizing this was your room. It's a pleasure to meet you," Tonks introduced herself warmly. Jiangqiu, feeling her cheeks flush, smiled and quickly responded, "Nice to meet you, Tonks. Ethan has spoken of you before." "Then, I won't disturb your discussion any further," Tonks said with a chuckle. "We were just finishing up, and we're about to head back to school for a break," Ethan added hastily, with Jiangqiu nodding in agreement. Tonks, without another word, glanced around the room, her eyes briefly resting on the disheveled bedding and the water stains on the floor before she turned and left, gently closing the door behind her. Ethan and Jiangchu exchanged worried glances. "Do you think she noticed?" Jiangchu asked, biting her lip. "I don't think so," Ethan reassured her. The two hurriedly gathered their belongings, as if fleeing the scene. By the time they reached the living room, Tonks was nowhere to be seen. "It looks like she's gone," Ethan sighed, gently wrapping his arm around Jiangchu's waist. She smiled softly, giving Ethan a playful look. Ethan, Jiangchu, we meet again." Tonks reappeared at the stairwell, holding a book she had just copied, The Book of L Laws Part 1. "Ah, we're heading back to Hogwarts." "Good night, Tonks." Ethan quickly regained his composure, his smile vanishing. "Good night," Tonks replied with a smile. Just as Ethan and Jiangchu were about to use the mansion technique, Tonks added, "Ethan, next time you study the documents of the Dragon Kingdom, remember to hang your socks on the door handle outside, not on the female senior's feet." Ethan's spellcasting hand froze, and without another word, he and Jiangchu hastily exited the tower. From the other side of the portal, Tonks's voice carried a hint of sadness. Ethan has grown up. Exiting the tower, Ethan found himself in the Ravenclaw lounge, with Jiangchu nowhere in sight, a typical outcome of the mansion technique. Ethan surmised that Jiangchu had likely used the technique in his room. Reflecting on Tonks's teasing, Ethan couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. He then attempted to contact Jiangchu through their intellectual imprint. Although he sensed her nearby, she did not respond, likely still feeling shy. Ethan woke Aiwu, who was sound asleep, and asked her to deliver a handwritten letter to Jiangchu. Soon after, Aiwu returned with a reply from Jiangchu, a sock that had been cleaned up. The sock, mistakenly worn by Jiangchu, was Ethan's. That night, Ethan lay in bed, restless, replaying the events in Jiangchu's room. It took another trip to the bathroom before he could calm down and fall asleep. The days that followed were busy yet fulfilling, filled with writing and studying. Whenever Ethan and Jiangchu were together, their eyes revealed a deep affection, entwined with unspoken emotions. Chapter 249. Ethan's Joyous Days. Ethan has been in high spirits lately, buoyed by a series of happy events. He's not alone in his good fortune. In the new Care of Magical Creatures class, he noticed that Hagrid's gaze had shifted towards him with an intensity that was hard to ignore. Even for a wizard of Ethan's caliber, the half-giant's burning stare sent shivers down his spine. Thankfully, once the class began in earnest, Hagrid's attention was diverted elsewhere. However, as Ethan was diligently completing his assignment, soothing a Motla rat, he felt a shadow loom over him. Looking up, he saw Hagrid, his eyes brimming with tears, wiping his brow with a handkerchief as large as a tablecloth. Hagrid, beaming with joy, exclaimed, "What a happy event, Ethan!" "Guess what?" Ethan, already suspecting the news from Hagrid's expression, feigned curiosity. "What's happened?" "We won Buckbeak's lawsuit. He can't stay at Hogwarts, but he's free. I've been celebrating all night." Hagrid's face glowed with excitement. "That's wonderful," Ethan responded, sharing in Hagrid's happiness. "This victory is all thanks to you. The lawyer, Miss Gianna, that you helped me find was incredible. She had a solution for every question I stumbled over." "It was nothing. Hermione Granger played a big part as well," Ethan reminded him. "And of course, Hermione, you both are amazing. Not only are you excellent students, but you're also wonderful friends," Hagrid said, his eyes welling up once more. "But Hagrid, have you thought about where Buckbeak will go?" Ethan inquired, shifting the conversation. Hagrid's smile faded. "I've asked around, but no one is willing to take him. They all say he's too big and too fierce." Ethan pondered this. The realization of Buckbeak's reputation among others seemed to dawn on Hagrid. "If you trust me, I can take care of him. I have the means, but you'll need to help him find a companion," Ethan offered. He had been gathering various magical creatures in the forest of his demiplane, and this was an opportunity to enrich the hippogriff population while also aiding Hagrid, a perfect solution. Hearing this, Hagrid agreed enthusiastically. "That would be fantastic, Ethan. If you could also bring a mate for Buckbeak, I can't thank you enough." Hagrid's excitement was palpable, and he looked as though he might embrace Ethan in his gratitude. Ethan, however, quickly excused himself to visit Buckbeak, wary of being overwhelmed by Hagrid's robust embrace. He found Buckbeak in the pumpkin patch behind Hagrid's hut, the creature appearing to sense its newfound freedom, fluttering its wings contentedly. Ethan climbed over the fence and approached Buckbeak, extending his hand towards the creature. Sensing Ethan's presence, Buckbeak knelt in a gesture of respect before rising again. Ethan caressed its wings, and Buckbeak responded by nuzzling his shoulder. With a gentle pat on its beak, Buckbeak knelt down, allowing Ethan to mount. He secured himself on Buckbeak's back, took hold of the reins, and with a light tap of his heels against Buckbeak's sides, they were ready to embark on their next adventure together. Buckbeak keenly obeyed the command and soared straight up into the night sky. Ethan gripped his sides with his knees, feeling the immense power of the wings flapping below. They flew silently to the upper levels of the castle. Ethan pulled the reins hard, directing Buckbeak towards the forbidden forest to join his group. There, following Hagrid's instructions, they found Buckbeak's partner, a pure white hippogriff. Upon Buckbeak's landing, the white hippogriff trotted out from among the others, and the two greeted each other with an intimate nuzzle, as if they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Ethan suddenly felt like an unnecessary third wheel. After allowing them a moment to express their affection, Ethan patted Buckbeak and then addressed them. "Come on, you two. I'll take you to your new home. You'll love it there." Buckbeak bowed slightly in obedience. The white hippogriff, though meeting Ethan for taints, he first time, felt a sense of friendliness towards him due to his druid aura and awkwardly lowered its head as well. Ethan grasped the necks of the two hippogriffs, activated the mansion technique, and transported them to the forest surrounding the tower. Upon Ethan's arrival, Larry, the unicorn, rushed over in surprise and nudged Ethan to the ground. "Hey, Larry, be gentle." Ethan laughed as the soft fluff of the unicorn tickled his face and neck. Larry then turned his attention to the two hippogriffs, inspecting them curiously. "Larry, these are the new hippogriffs. As the guardian here, you must take good care of them." "Understood, Ethan," Larry responded, circling the hippogriffs, who raised their hooves and unfurled their wings in response. Larry, having lived in Ethan's forest for many years and under the influence of nature's power, had grown stronger and more spiritual than ordinary unicorns, even beginning to awaken magical abilities. The two hippogriffs, sensing Larry's strong connection to natural forces, submitted to his authority. Ethan watched with a smile as Larry led the newcomers deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, in the library, Zhang Chu found herself unable to concentrate on her reading. Even the Book of All Laws seemed dull, her thoughts drifting back to a recent event, pondering the implications of mastering the human giant transformation spell. Would he prefer a larger form, she wondered, then chastised herself for such wild thoughts. Sighing, she put down the book and took out a crumpled booklet from her backpack, her fingers tracing the words as if touching her very soul. "What are you doing?" A curious voice interrupted her reverie. Startled, Zhang Chu dropped the booklet. As she bent to pick it up, Hermione Granger was already holding it. "Is this modern Zhengqi massage in Guangdong?" Hermione read the title in Chinese, causing Zhang Chu to blush. Surprised, Zhang Chu looked up at Hermione, who explained, "After meeting Ethan, I started to learn Chinese." Hermione said dryly, returning the pamphlet to Zhang Chu. Calmly, Zhang Chu took it and tucked it into her bag. At that moment, inspired by the intelligence elixir, her mind raced with thoughts, leading her to a decision. "You might have noticed that Ethan has been dedicating himself to writing a book lately and is exhausted every day," Zhang Chu began, her delicate chin lifted in a way that accentuated her beauty. "Therefore, I want to learn the massage techniques from this book to help him alleviate his fatigue effectively, ensuring he gets the rest he needs." Her words sounded unconvincing even to her own ears, oblivious to the fact that her actions were actually draining Ethan's energy. Hermione, her fingers absently playing with the cuffs of her magic robe, felt a complex mix of emotions. She could see a deep affection in Zhang Chu's eyes. Her voice was soft yet firm, carrying a hint of pride. "Ethan really enjoys my massages. He needs me to help him relax." These words resonated with Hermione, allowing her to sense Zhang Chu's genuine care and tenderness. Despite being a girl herself, Hermione couldn't deny the gentle and delicate emotions conveyed by Zhang Chu, as soothing as a spring breeze over a lake. making it hard for her to respond with criticism. After sharing her thoughts, Zhang Chu gave Hermione a meaningful look, picked up her bag, and left the library. Her departure left behind a faint fragrance and deep-seated questions in Hermione's heart. Hermione sat there, dazed, with new principles of mathematical divination open in front of her, but her mind was far from the book. Instead, Zhang Chu's words and laughter echoed in her thoughts. The numbers and symbols that usually made sense to her now swirled in her mind, morphing into a row of Chinese characters, modern Genki massage in a broad sense. Feeling confused, Hermione closed the book and rested her chin in her hands. They were good friends, yet she felt helpless when it came to assisting Ethan. Helping with his homework? Unlike Harry and Ron, Ethan was ever baffled by academic challenges. In fact, he often ended up teaching her instead. Taking care of his daily needs? Being a Ravenclaw, he was self-sufficient, even when sitting at the Gryffindor table, leaving little for her to offer in terms of support. Recalling the summer vacation they spent together after their first year, Hermione remembered the care Ethan had shown her. The thought of reciprocating with something as personal as dental hygiene made her anxious. Chapter 250. Ethan spent an entire week and finally completed the Book of All Laws, mastering arcane magic and first-level spells. He realized that continuing at this pace was not feasible. With about 100 first-level arcane spells under his belt, and even more in the second level, over 200 to be precise, he understood that the complexity of level 2 spells far exceeded those of level 1. To master this part alone, he feared it would take him a month. And what about levels 3, 4, or even higher? While it's true that arcane magic spells are most abundant between the 2nd and 5th levels, offering a wide range of uses, the number of spells begins to decrease from the 6th level onward. However, the complexity increases, making it more challenging to record them in a magic book for self-learning. At his current rate, completing the task within a year seemed impossible. Initially, Ethan believed his exceptional understanding, combined with spells like Fox's Cunning and Arcane Wisdom, and the additional boost from Ravenclaw's crown, which increased his attribute by 6, would suffice. His intelligence, reaching an impressive 28 points after all the bonuses, far beyond the average human level of 10 and the human maximum of 18, was remarkable. Such intelligence is usually only seen among powerful fantasy races and lord creatures. Yet, when faced with the monumental task of compiling the Book of All Dharmas, it proved inadequate. Deciding against further hesitation, Ethan chose to undergo a transformation, opting for the permanent intelligence elixir and embarking on a new wilderness transformation. His choice, the Phoenix. News of his decision quickly spread to Jaina, Tonks, Onyxia, Cyrilla, Hermione, Penelo, Chuzhang, and Luna. Their curiosity was piqued. Despite Ethan's numerous incredible feats, transforming into a magical creature remained the most legendary. Cyrilla and Hermione had witnessed Ethan's first transformation into a chimera. Had it not been for the urgency of dealing with the basilisk, Jaina and the others would have eagerly watched his second transformation into a coatl. They had made him promise to inform them of any future transformations. Thus, Ethan's third wilderness ceremony became a gathering for the Genius Club. The next evening, as the moon rose over Hogwarts, Ethan met his friends, Cyrilla, Penelope, Zhang Chu, Luna, and Hermione, at the auditorium's entrance after dinner. They were all there, waiting for him. Luna leaned on the stair railing, her gaze distant and thoughtful. Hermione sat on the spiral staircase, engrossed in a book, whispering to herself. Cyrilla stretched her limbs, exuding the aura of a warrior ready for battle. Penelope gazed at her companions, lost in thought, while Zhang Chu leaned against the wall, eagerly anticipating Ethan's arrival. Upon seeing Ethan, their focus immediately shifted to him. "Good evening," he greeted, scratching his head in embarrassment and feeling a twinge of guilt for bringing them together without prior discussion. "Ahem, let's head to the tower and talk about it," he suggested, activating the mansion technique with ease and leading them to the workshop in the tower. This room was where Ethan carefully placed the main ingredient, phoenix feathers, into the automatic crucible, followed by additional salamander hearts and divine power crystals from the Quetzalcoatl. With his druidic ability for wild transformation and his profound knowledge of potions, Ethan had made some adjustments to the elixir of permanent intelligence. The chosen materials symbolized the power of the fire element and the forces of good. Ethan was aware that creatures like the Phoenix exist across many magical planes with similar characteristics. However, the strength of a Phoenix varies from one world to another. For instance, the Phoenixes in the worlds of D&D and WoW are not only magical birds, but also incarnations of the fire element, significantly more powerful than those in the Harry Potter universe. Ethan intended to harness this power from another world by transforming himself into a Phoenix. As the final ingredients were mixed, the elixir was swiftly concocted. Ethan poured the dense, potent liquid into a crystal potion bottle and carried it out of the workshop to the living room, where Gianna and the others had been eagerly waiting. Upon seeing Ethan, Gianna quickly approached and asked, "How did it go? Will it work?" "Of course, I've succeeded twice before," Ethan replied with confidence. Following Ethan, the group left the tower and gathered under the grand oak tree. The demiplane had expanded, connecting to the outside world, and the moon had risen to the perfect height. Under Ethan's direction, moonlight cascaded down like a waterfall, bathing him in its glow. Ethan calmly drank the elixir of permanent intelligence and commenced the wilderness ceremony. Everyone watched intently, holding their breath as Ethan felt every muscle and nerve in his body undergo a feverish transformation. It was as if he was awakening from a deep slumber, only to find himself enveloped in a dense layer of red feathers. These feathers, emerging quietly from his face like a splendid veil, gradually covered his entire face before extending towards his neck and shoulders. Unlike Dumbledore's fox, Ethan could feel the potent fire element within the feathers and the flicker of flames at their tips. With a mere thought, these feathers could burst into intense flames. Raising his hands, Ethan noticed they were covered in feathers, his slender fingers morphing visibly. The gaps between his fingers vanished, fused together in a sea of feathers. His heart pounded fiercely, signaling the onset of something extraordinary. In a burst of blazing fire, a magnificent phoenix appeared before the onlookers. Its feathers were a mix of golden hues and bright red flames, its body elegant and large, akin to a swan's. It boasted a long, shimmering golden tail, and its beak and claws gleamed with a golden sheen, resembling a majestic giant eagle. Wilderness transformation into Phoenix. Stats: Strength 27, Agility 25, Constitution 20, Intelligence 25, Perception 22, Charm 22. Abilities included intermediate magic resistance, self-regeneration, bath in fire, fire immunity, iron will, fire caster, fire teleportation, messaging feather, healing tears, and fire breath. Spells ranged from level 0, such as detect magic and detect poison, to level 8 spells like group healing of fatal wounds and instant wall of fire, showcasing a formidable array of magical capabilities. Chapter 48, A New Month Approaches. As we welcome the arrival of a new month, I find myself reaching out to you, my dear readers, with a request. This is a call for your support through custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Your engagement means the world to me as an author. If you have any votes to spare, I kindly ask that you consider directing them my way. Your support is invaluable and deeply appreciated. Chapter 251, The Phoenix Transformation. Looking at the fiery red bird that appeared before them, everyone was both surprised and delighted. "It's really a phoenix! Ethan succeeded!" Gianna exclaimed, moving forward excitedly. "Another new magical creature." Tonks was in disbelief. "It's perfect!" Zhangchu admired the fiery red bird, noting, "Whether in the west or the east, the phoenix is a beautiful and sacred creature." However, the phoenix transformed by Ethan seems somewhat different from Dumbledore's fox. Hermione, with her keen observation, pointed out, "The phoenix transformed by Ethan actually has fire at the tips of its feathers." Ethan, in his phoenix state, glanced at her, impressed. As expected of Hermione, she had noticed the key difference immediately. Ethan reflected on his self-taught ability after transforming into a phoenix, bathing in the fire. With just a thought, the feathers all over his body turned from solid forms into burning flames, transforming the entire phoenix into a magnificent firebird. "Now, Ethan's phoenix and Kael'thas' phoenix are exactly the same," Jaina remarked, recalling her friend, the elf prince Kael'thas, who had a phoenix named Ao. Compared to before, this phoenix, now enveloped in flames, looked both holy and dangerous. Everyone watched the firebird soar in the air, illuminating the surroundings like a miniature sun. In this state, the phoenix's pecks and claws inflicted fire damage, and even a simple flap of its wings could produce a blast of hot air. Iwu, who initially wanted to fly around with Ethan, fled in fear. Soon, Ethan restrained his flames and returned to the ground. Everyone immediately gathered around, curious about this unique phoenix. If Ethan transforms into such a phoenix, will he still retain those special abilities? Penelo asked curiously. Hermione, recalling the information she had read, began to share more about the phoenix's abilities. The lifespan of the phoenix is extremely long because it can regenerate. When its body begins to fail, it throws itself into the fire, and a new phoenix rises from the ashes. The phoenix is a gentle creature that only eats herbs. Like the ball escape bird, it can disappear and reappear at will. The phoenix's song has magical powers. It is believed to give courage to those with pure hearts and instill fear in those with dark intentions. Phoenix tears have strong healing properties. Everyone listened intently to Hermione's explanation, eager to understand the abilities of phoenixes and compare them. So, let's give it a try, Jaina suggested, scanning the faces of everyone present. Suddenly, she grabbed an excited Tonks and pulled her to Ethan's side. The phoenixes transformed by Ethan tilted their heads, looking curiously at the Princess of Kol Tiras. Jaina, demonstrating her superb transformation spell skills, pointed her wand, and the empty potion bottle Ethan had set aside turned into a sharp dagger, emitting a cold light. Tonks, pulled to the front by her boss, felt something was amiss, but didn't dare to object due to their usual relationship. Amid everyone's surprised cries, Tonks's arm was cut, creating a deep wound from which blood quickly flowed. Jaina waved her wand again, and a small water glass appeared in her hand. She leaned down, placing the glass under the phoenix's eyelids. Understanding the situation, the phoenix blinked, struggling to open its mouth, and a few tears fell into the glass. Jaina then took Tonks's injured arm and carefully tilted the water glass, allowing a tear to fall onto the wound. The tears miraculously healed Tonks's wound, bringing her back to her senses. She looked at Jaina angrily. "Miss Proudmoore, why don't you try it yourself?" she asked. "I fear pain," Jaina replied without hesitation, her eyes innocent and frank. This response made Onyxia and Cyrilla burst into laughter. Even Luna, initially a bit confused, smiled. Hermione tried to suppress her smile, but her face turned red. Jiangqiu also smiled, though she remained reserved and silent. Ethan began to experiment with other abilities, and suddenly, the figure of the phoenix changed. In a flash, it disappeared from everyone's sight and reappeared atop an oak tree. With another thought, Ethan flashed again and appeared by the river surrounding the forest. Satisfied, Phoenix nodded and flashed back to the oak tree. Hermione approached with a beaming smile, circling Ethan. "Don't move," she said. Ethan was momentarily confused, wondering if something was wrong with his teleportation. Suddenly, he felt a pain under his wings and flew to the side, looking at Hermione angrily. However, Hermione seemed oblivious to his anger, standing there with 2 golden phoenix feathers in her hands, smiling broadly. "As far as I know, the phoenix can not only apparate itself, but its feathers can also send letters," she explained. She took out a piece of paper from her pocket, inserted the feather into it, and the next second, the letter delivered by the feather appeared above Ethan's head. Jaina laughed happily at this. Luna focused her gaze on Ethan again, asking curiously, "The feathers of an animagus after transformation should be body hair. Ethan, where on your body did these feathers come from?" Nina's question, which only added fuel to the fire, made Ethan turn his head away in anger. Jiangqiu couldn't hold back her laughter any longer, and Cyrilla and Penelo were so amused they sat on the ground, laughing heartily. Only Tonks didn't laugh. She just blinked, feeling as though she had seen this scene before. She looked at Ethan, and their eyes met. After a moment of thought, Jaina said to Ethan, "Brother Ethan, Hermione mentioned that the Song of the Phoenix has magical powers. It can strengthen the courage of those with pure hearts and dispel the fears of those with impure hearts. Why don't you give it a try?" Ethan sensed the mischievousness in her smile. Upon hearing this, everyone else looked at him expectantly. Onyxia seized the opportunity to start making noises, and the silly Iwu joined in, shouting loudly. Phoenix turned his head, clearly rejecting Jaina's suggestion. However, Jaina persisted. Don't be shy, little brother Ethan. It's not like you can't sing. Iwu said you taught her many good songs, and she even praised your singing. Ethan looked at the little dragon, who held its head high, proudly, without showing any signs of guilt for betraying its master. Hesitantly, Ethan looked at his companions, feeling that if he didn't agree, they would continue to persuade him. So, he nodded in agreement. Then, Phoenix opened its mouth, and its voice grew louder, starting from a low pitch and rising higher. The song of the Phoenix was ethereal, mysterious, and exhilarating, almost as if it could awaken people from their slumber. Ethan chose a rhythm that resembled hundreds of birds paying homage to the Phoenix, giving the song a profound oriental charm. As he sang, the music swelled, and it felt as though the voice was vibrating within the chests of those listening. The mood of everyone present was lifted even higher, and they praised the song repeatedly. Indeed, this song had the power to inspire. Ethan finally ceased his singing. There was no need to experiment further with the Phoenix's fire breath and fire spells. It had almost become his instinct. Thus, Ethan reverted to his human form. Chapter 252. After observing the wilderness ceremony, everyone was very satisfied. Jaina surveyed the group and suddenly declared, "This seems to be our genius club." Some tactless person named it. Anyway, since this is the first time we've all gathered, why not celebrate with a party? The person she referred to with disdain looked at the witches assembled, reveling in their harmonious coexistence, and agreed. Indeed, there's no better time than now. We haven't even introduced ourselves to each other yet. Then, let me prepare some midnight snacks, Zhang Chu volunteered, eager to impress Ethan's god sisters. Let me help too, Penelo chimed in immediately. And I, Hermione added. So, Tonks led them to the kitchen to prepare food. Jaina was about to follow, but was halted by Ethan. Reflecting on her transformation into a phoenix and the insights gained from the Black family's Animagus secret book, Ethan, whose intellect had soared to 23 points, had made a breakthrough. I think I've figured out how to enable people to become magical animagi without the wilderness rituals, but through the standard animagus process, Ethan shared with her. So like you, we could also have the chance to transform into magical creatures? Jaina's eyes sparkled. As expected of Ethan, you've achieved something unprecedented. In her eyes, Ethan's potential was now on par with legendary mages like Antonidas and even Guardian Egwin. What do you think, Jaina? Do you have any preferences? Ethan inquired, raising an eyebrow. Of course, I've always wanted to transform into a powerful creature like you, Jaina responded eagerly. She hadn't pursued animagus transformation not due to a lack of skill, but because transforming into an ordinary creature seemed pointless to her. However, becoming a powerful magical creature was a different story. At that moment, several ideas crossed her mind. Onyxia, however, was unimpressed. What's so great about transforming into a magical creature? If you have this skill, why not lift the restrictions on me instead? That would be better than any animagus transformation. But Ethan simply rolled his eyes at her. You're missing the point. It wasn't that he feared losing control over Onyxia. The use of a philosopher's stone had permanently marked her with the curse of malicious transformation. He could restrain her as he pleased, even if she regained her full strength. She couldn't break free. However, Ethan couldn't monitor her constantly. If she reverted to her original form without his notice, there was no telling what havoc she might wreak. Dismissing Onyxia's complaints, Ethan turned to the others. Think about what magical animal you'd like to become. It's best to gather essential materials from the creature in advance, such as blood or a heart. I'll compile a document with relevant knowledge and precautions and leave it in the tower. You can start the preliminary preparations as required. Jaina and Cyrilla nodded in agreement. Then, Jaina suggested, now that you've discovered how to transform ordinary wizards into magical animagi, why not choose a form and register with the Ministry of Magic as the 8th animagus? Register with the Ministry of Magic. Ethan pondered the suggestion from the blonde before him. Yes, doing so would not only legitimize your animagus form, but also significantly boost your reputation, Jaina explained. A magical animagus is unique. With the right approach, the influence you gain could rival that of participating in the World Cup, especially since you haven't joined the Yin Kingdom team yet. Ethan nodded thoughtfully after hearing this. Indeed, with the right strategy, this could open up new avenues for recognition and influence. At his current level, Ethan didn't need to be overly cautious in some aspects and should be more open about them. Gianna continued, "If you register, you can also establish an outpost for us. As for transforming into a magical animagus, we don't need to rush. We can take it step by step." Jaina Proudmoore, seasoned by her experiences in the Ministry of Magic, had her own strategies for increasing her reputation and leveraging this topic. In the original World of Warcraft timeline, after taking charge of Theramore, she evolved from an innocent girl into a seasoned politician, showcasing her potential in political maneuvering. Now, in the Harry Potter world, she was realizing this potential anew. Onyxia, though the concept of a magical animagus was foreign to her as the Black Dragon Princess, found herself intrigued by political schemes. Thus, the two, who would typically be adversaries in WoW, found common ground and engaged in a lively discussion. Ruila, with her arms folded, listened with interest. Her life experiences had given her a keen insight into political machinations, though she preferred not to get involved herself. She was straightforward and chose to follow Ethan's plans. In the kitchen, supper was swiftly prepared. Everyone gathered on the sofa, where Ethan introduced his female classmates to Gianna and the others. "Let me introduce you to Miss Penelope Clivet, the president of our Hogwarts Student Union and a Ravenclaw. You might already know her. She plans to take the Auror exams with Cyrilla after graduation," Ethan said. Penelope smiled warmly and stood up. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," she said. Tonks responded enthusiastically. "Welcome to the Aurors, Penelope. I'll look out for you when the time comes. This is Zhang Chu, a senior who is a year above me and the seeker on our team. She's also from my hometown." Zhang Chu exuded the quiet and elegant demeanor typical of an Eastern woman, appearing more dignified than usual, though she blushed at Tonks's playful gaze. "Miss Luna Lovegood, a year below me, and also a Ravenclaw," Ethan continued. Onyxia's interest was piqued. "Is this the daughter of Mr. Xenophilius Lovegood?" Luna's gaze met Onyxia's, and she instinctively recoiled, her psychic sensitivities making her wary. "Don't worry, Luna. She poses no threat to you," Ethan reassured her, patting her head. He then turned to Gianna and the others. "These are my close friends at Hogwarts, key members of the Erotic Society, and the most trustworthy people I know," Ethan concluded, catching Tonks's intrigued look. Gianna sensed that their connection with Ethan was profound. Ethan proceeded to introduce Gianna, Tonks, and Onyxia to everyone, sharing their identities and future plans. The conversation eventually turned to the topic of magical animagi, culminating in Ethan choosing the Chimera as his registered form. This choice was symbolic, as the Chimera comprised a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, representing the 4 houses of Hogwarts. Moreover, Ethan's Chimera transformation allowed for versatility, enabling him to morph into the 4 separate animals or combine them into magical creatures like griffins, showcasing a range of abilities. Through this gathering, the members of the Genius Club became officially acquainted. At dawn the next day, Jaina personally visited Hogwarts to request leave for Ethan from Professor Flitwick, then accompanied him and Tonks to the Ministry of Magic for animagus registration. With Jaina's influence, the process was streamlined for Ethan, allowing for a smooth and efficient registration, minutes to run away. After completing the process, Ethan followed Jaina to the 2nd floor of the Ministry of Magic, where the Office for the Prohibition of Abuse of Magic is located. The staff in the office were quite surprised that someone had come to register as an animagus. After all, it had been a century since a real registration was done. There were only 7 animagi registered, and more than half of these staff members had never witnessed an animagus registration. Tonks handed them a stack of parchment and immediately let out a surprised breath. "You succeeded in becoming an animagus in the form of a magical creature, a chimera?" A square-faced, gray-haired witch asked Ethan in a slightly lowered voice. If the boy in front of her had not been sent for registration, Jaina herself, she almost wanted to throw the materials in her hand to the ground. After all, Jaina is currently in the Legal Enforcement Department, and even the power of the entire Ministry of Magic is at its peak. The Office for the Prohibition of Abuse of Magic is a subordinate department of the Law Enforcement Department. Speaking of which, Jaina is still their boss. However, registering as an animagus is a very serious matter, and she had no time or mood to play childish games with children. Ethan saw her doubts and wisely chose not to waste any time explaining, but simply nodded. But obviously, the other party wanted to confirm again. Her expression was very serious, staring closely into Ethan's eyes. "Can you fully transform into an animagus?" "Yes," Ethan nodded. "A chimera?" Her voice became deeper. Ethan nodded again. "Does your animagus form have the magical power of a chimera? I mean, it's not just the appearance of a chimera?" "Yes," Ethan nodded, and then added, "If you have paid attention to the academic research on magical creatures, you will find that what maintains the stable existence of a chimera is the magical power in its body. Without it, maintaining its form would be impossible." "Is there really such a study?" The gray-haired witch looked around blankly, but her subordinates were not as knowledgeable as she had hoped. Only a middle-aged wizard raised his hand. "Yes, Miss Hopkirk, I believe this theory was mentioned in a front-page paper in an issue of the annual magazine of Fantastic Beasts last year. I remember that paper won the annual award for its groundbreaking research methods. The author of that paper was even hailed by Newt Scamander as a future star of magzoology." The wizard's tone was full of admiration. "In fact, I am the author of that paper," Ethan smiled at him. The wizard was surprised at first, and then immediately stepped forward with a book in hand and asked Ethan for his autograph. What was supposed to be a straightforward animagus registration seemed to have turned into a fan meeting. However, the harmonious scene was immediately interrupted. "Then I guess you need to transform into your animagus form now to prove that you're not lying." Her tone was authoritative. Chapter 248 has finally been released. It's really difficult to write something that people like to hear and see. Chapter 253. Ethan was particularly surprised by the witch's attitude. If her initial reaction could be somewhat justified, her subsequent behavior was inexplicable, making Ethan question the effectiveness of his keen intelligence. Without responding verbally, he glanced at Gianna, the deputy director of the Legal Enforcement Department, wondering why her subordinate would dare to be so insolent in her presence. Gianna Proudmoore was equally infuriated. She quickly sifted through her memories for information about Mafalda Hopkirk, soon realizing the root of the problem. She shared a bitter smile with Ethan, signaling her temporary inability to exert control. Determined to make a statement, Ethan transformed into a chimera in front of everyone. This creature, with the body of a lion, wings of an eagle, fur of a badger, claws of an eagle, and tail of a snake, let out a roar that reverberated through the office, scattering papers from Hopkirk's desk. After the demonstration, he reverted to his human form, leaving Hopkirk visibly shaken. As she reviewed Ethan's file with a newfound respect, she inquired, "Are you 14 now?" "Yes," Ethan replied, unfazed by the question about his age. "And did you learn about being an animagus at school? Who taught you?" "Yes, I've learned a great deal from each professor, including Professor Dumbledore, Professor Flitwick, and Professor McGonagall," Ethan answered calmly. Gianna, unable to contain her frustration any longer, confronted Hopkirk. "What exactly are you insinuating, Mafalda Hopkirk? This isn't standard procedure for an audit. Or are you still harboring resentment towards Barty Crouch and using Ethan, who provided crucial evidence, as a scapegoat?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Hopkirk replied, her composure slipping momentarily before she regained her stern demeanor, avoiding Gianna's gaze. To transform into an animagus at such a young age is indeed impressive. However, we need to ascertain whether his animagus form possesses magical powers or is merely for show, Hopkirk stated, trying to justify her scrutiny. "So, you've chosen to ignore the established guidelines?" Gianna retorted, her posture commanding despite sitting. Hopkirk uncomfortably shifted, attempting to defend her stance. "That document is merely a guideline, not a formal rule mandated by the Ministry of Magic, so I am not obliged to follow it." This was a blatant lie. The Ministry of Magic's professional judgments are typically based on industry consensus, even if not explicitly mandated. Hopkirk's insistence on her point left Gianna without a direct counter-argument. The more Hopkirk spoke, the more righteous she felt, believing her stance against Barty Crouch justified her actions. She was well aware of Ethan's significance to Gianna and saw this as an opportunity to undermine her authority. Gianna's anger wasn't sparked by the test itself, as Ethan's capabilities were undeniable. Instead, it was Hopkirk's confrontational approach that was unprecedented in Animagus registration history, a stark contrast to the enthusiasm seen during Professor McGonagall's time. Gianna looked on with a deep, unreadable expression, recognizing this as a political maneuver rather than a time for overt confrontation. In the face of political strife, strategic patience was essential. She had already devised a plan to handle this situation, and Ethan was even more unsuspecting. Fearlessly, he showcased his extraordinary anti-magic and regeneration abilities to the Ministry of Magic employees. Despite Hopkirk's attempts to increase the test difficulty, Ethan remained unfazed. In the breath test, Ethan even exhaled a flame, setting the documents on Hopkirk's desk ablaze. Ultimately, Hopkirk had no choice but to officially register Ethan, acknowledging him as the 8th publicly registered animagus in the past century. More significantly, Ethan is currently the world's only animagus capable of transforming into a magical creature, the Chimera. Jaina embraced Ethan warmly then. Without sparing Hopkirk another mad glance, she walked out of the room. Outside, Gianna revealed to Ethan, "Hopkirk was once promoted by the old Barty Crouch, which is why he targeted you. His approach was rather clumsy, likely his own doing, but it also presents us with an opportunity." Gianna leaned closer and whispered, "I've arranged for Tonks to take you to the lounge for a meal. Later, there's a scheduled interview with reporters. During the interview, you can." She trailed off, but Ethan understood her implication. After enjoying a hearty meal with Tonks in the lounge, Ethan faced an unexpectedly large gathering of reporters. Their keen instincts and well-informed nature were indeed impressive. Gianna had only contacted familiar media outlets like the Daily Prophet and the Quibbler, yet reporters from various other publications had also arrived, drawn by the news. "Ethan Green, transforming into an animagus at 14. What's your secret? How does it feel to be the first magical animagus? Being the first to defeat a chimera, how has this influenced your animagus form?" The reporters bombarded him with questions, each more varied than the last. Ethan responded calmly and with a smile, winning over the reporters with his demeanor. When asked about his experience registering as an animagus with the Magical Abuse Office, Ethan perked up. "I wondered if their rudeness was standard for all testers. If so, it might explain the scarcity of registered animagi and the prevalence of unregistered ones." His smile was gentle, but his words carried a sharp critique. The reporters, sensing a major story, pressed for details. "Do you think the ministry's officials need improvement? Were you specifically targeted during today's test?" Ethan suggested. "A stricter review by the ministry's agency could be beneficial, but the attitude of the testers should be more welcoming. The ministry should serve the wizarding community, not." In front of the reporters, Ethan skillfully used his charm to steer the conversation, garnering sympathy for his situation and fostering dissatisfaction with the ministry. His comments sparked great interest among the reporters, especially Rita Skeeter, whose green-feathered pen furiously scribbled notes. Ethan knew she was likely embellishing his story, but this time, her exaggeration served his purpose well. To further win the reporters' favor, Ethan later transformed into his animagus form, showcasing his unique ability. The chimera, symbolizing the unity of the 4 major houses, was met with unanimous admiration. The reporters interpreted this as a testament to Ethan Green's embodiment of Hogwarts' finest qualities. In contrast, the person opposing him was implicitly criticized. The day after registration, Ethan returned to Hogwarts. Aside from Cyrilla, Hermione, 5 other girls, and Professor Flitwick, Ethan's head of house, no one knew that Ethan had quietly become the 8th publicly registered animagus in the United Kingdom this century. The news only spread the next morning, when owls delivered newspapers to the dining hall, revealing Ethan's remarkable achievement. Despite being accustomed to Ethan's extraordinary feats, the students couldn't help but engage in excited discussions. Ethan's history of achievements, including topping his class, slaying the Chimera, defeating the Basilisk, and saving Sirius were well known. Now, he had become the only wizard capable of transforming into a Chimera. Ethan, anticipating the buzz, calmly took his seat and enjoyed his breakfast. Zhangqiu, sitting next to him, proudly read out every report mentioning Ethan. The headlines were filled with images of his Chimera transformation and his interviews. The reports hailed him as a paragon of virtue and a role model for young wizards, enhancing the pride of those in the learned society. Ethan, however, was more concerned with the Ministry of Magic's treatment of animagus registrants. The Daily Prophet, in particular, criticized the ministry's harsh and indifferent approach. The article drew parallels with the injustice faced by Sirius B. Lack, who was wrongfully imprisoned but managed to escape Azkaban through his animagus abilities. It highlighted that Mafalda Hopkirk, who oversaw Ethan's registration, was promoted by Barty Crouch, the same official involved in the Sirius case. This raised questions about whether Crouch's actions were motivated by revenge against Ethan, who played a crucial role in exonerating Sirius. The incident underscored the need for the Ministry of Magic to improve its management of animagi, enhance the professionalism of its officials, and adopt a more respectful approach. The Daily Prophet promised to follow up on the issue, eagerly awaiting the ministry's response. Chief reporter Rita Skeeter provided coverage from Beggar, shedding light on a matter of significant concern within the wizarding community. Chapter 254. After a recent surge in media publicity, Ethan could feel his reputation growing at an astonishing rate. One clear indicator was the significant increase in love letters he received. While he had always been popular, receiving numerous love letters from both genders, the volume had now skyrocketed. Additionally, he began receiving many invitations from journals focused on magical zoology and transfiguration. Even Professor McGonagall approached Ethan, asking him to serve as a guest editor for Transfiguration Today and to discuss the principles behind the magical animagus transformation. Ethan readily accepted, eager to seize the opportunity to establish himself in the academic world. He planned to outline the general principles while withholding key processes and data, ensuring his methods couldn't be easily replicated. Moreover, Ethan's animagus transformation technique required understanding arcane magic, a skill beyond the reach of most wizards, no matter how talented. Ethan's rising fame also led to a surge in applications to join the Erudite Society, the 280 organization he had established, making it the most sought-after student society at Hogwarts, surpassing even Professor Slughorn's Slug Club. Young wizards believed that only the most exceptional were worthy of membership. Even Percy Weasley and Draco Malfoy expressed interest in joining, each with their motives. Percy's flattery hinted at his desire for future assistance in the Ministry of Magic, likely due to Ethan's connection with Jaina. Draco's application, on the other hand, suggested the Malfoy family's knack for adapting to new situations, possibly under his father's directive. Ethan welcomed their interest, as it posed no downside for him. The Weasley family, except Ron, were particularly friendly towards him. Mrs. Weasley was always warm. Arthur Weasley collaborated with him on Muggle technology transformations. The Sly twins were his sponsors, and Ginny, his little crush, supported him unconditionally. She was now working under Hermione in the Human Resources Department of the Erudite Society. Despite Ethan's intellectual advancements accelerating the progress of the Book of Laws, the increasing complexity of spells meant he had less free time. Consequently, the organization of Erudite Society activities fell to the girls. Cirilla and Penello were tasked with planning events. Hermione was swamped with elective courses. Zhangqiu lacked the magical proficiency for advanced learning, and Luna preferred spending time with Aiwu, showing a penchant for mischief similar to Ethan's. The sudden spike in Ethan's popularity posed significant challenges for the Erudite Society, especially in managing the influx of applications for the training camp. Faced with these difficulties, Ethan found himself in a position where he had to convene a meeting. The girls gathered privately in the tower to coordinate their work issues. After the meeting, Ethan hurried back to the workroom to continue his significant project. Luna, embracing Aiwu, quickly left with her, leaving Cirilla, Penello, Hermione, and Zhangqiu behind, who planned to chat for a bit before departing separately. Hermione, observing Penelo's weary expression, suggested with genuine concern, "Penelo, with the NEE's exam approaching, which is crucial for your future, I recommend you focus entirely on your revision. It's the wisest choice." Hermione, holding a stack of application forms, looked at Penelo with a mix of concern and earnestness. Penelo, however, became instantly cautious, her eyes narrowing slightly as if to shield her thoughts from being read. Despite Penelo's guarded reaction, Hermione continued, "Penelo, as you're about to graduate, Ethan needs assistance. I believe I'm well suited to help him in this regard. We're in the same year, so I can support him in managing the academy until we graduate. If I start learning about this job now, it will benefit you, me, and Ethan." Hermione's gaze was steady on Penelo, her words heartfelt and without ulterior motives. The room fell into an unexpected silence. Jiangqiu, slightly covering her mouth, looked on in shock, puzzled by the sudden shift in the conversation. Cirilla, seated on a separate sofa and polishing her arcane sword, observed the exchange quietly with her gray-green eyes, not uttering a word. After a moment, Penelo chuckled awkwardly and accepted Hermione's proposal. Hermione's argument was indeed flawless. Penelo was nearing graduation, and Ethan genuinely needed help. Despite her reluctance, Penelo had to concede that Hermione was a trustworthy candidate whom Ethan respected and was competent enough for the role. Despite the pressures of her own studies, Hermione could dedicate more time to organizing and building training activities, thanks to the Time Turner. She even sacrificed taking Professor Trialini's divination class to allocate more time for these responsibilities. This shift in their roles was not communicated to Ethan, but he was aware of it. Being astute, he chose not to intervene in their decision or bring it up to avoid any unnecessary complications. The day after this development, Ethan learned about the situation with Jaina and the resolution of the issue at the Office for the Prohibition of Abuse of Magic. Mafalda Hopkirk, who had caused trouble for Ethan, was indeed under Crouch's command. She was dismissed by Fudge's faction for unauthorized actions against Ethan, escalating from poor service to tarnishing the Ministry of Magic's image, resulting in her losing her job. Although Hopkirk's actions were misguided, Crouch, as the head of her faction, attempted to defend her position in front of Fudge. However, Fudge made it clear that if Crouch insisted on protecting Hopkirk, he would reveal to the press that it was Crouch's influence that prevented her from being punished. Such a revelation would confirm the Daily Prophet's speculation about Crouch's attempts to suppress Ethan. For the sake of his reputation, Crouch had no choice but to reluctantly let Hopkirk go. Many officials who were initially aligned with Crouch's faction saw this as an opportunity to switch sides to Fudge and Jaina's camp. Upon hearing about these developments, Ethan secretly felt a sense of satisfaction for Jaina's actions, acknowledging her strategic maneuvering. In the case of Blake, Gianna's forces were fully counterattacked by Crouch's group, putting her in a precarious position at the Ministry of Magic. However, she adeptly seized the opportunity, transforming her conflict with Crouch into the conflict between her alliance with Fudge and Crouch. This maneuver positioned Fudge and his family as a shield. In the duel between Fudge and Crouch, Gianna not only managed to mitigate the repercussions of Blake's overturned verdict, but also expanded her own influence. Ethan predicted a surge of media coverage the following day, with the Ministry of Magic's dismissal of Hopkirk likely becoming a focal point for reporters. Crouch's influence was expected to wane, a development neither Fudge nor Gianna would overlook. Yet, Gianna understood that fully suppressing Crouch's power was unrealistic. The Crouch family, with its century-old political legacy, was too deeply embedded in the ministry to be easily dismantled. Gianna faced her own challenges. If the legal enforcement department was the ministry's core, then the Aura office was its heart. As the department housing the most elite members, the Aura office was a critical area for Gianna to infiltrate. The current director, Rufus Scrimger, was a pure Aura focused on combating dark wizards and seldom engaged in politics. However, to control this key department, Gianna needed to place her allies within its ranks, making the support from the erudite society crucial. Ethan's rising influence, especially his close ties with Gianna, the deputy director of the Department of Legal Enforcement, became widely known. This recognition attracted many graduates like Percy Weasley, who saw the Erudite Society not just as an academic group, but as a gateway to influential positions within the ministry. Gianna's growing influence within the ministry was evident to those paying attention. Ethan began evaluating graduates interested in joining the ministry, assessing their magical proficiency, practical skills, behavior, character, and loyalty. After a thorough selection process, he identified a group of outstanding candidates for Gianna. Recognizing the magnitude of this task, Ethan delegated the responsibility to Sorella and Penelo, who would lead this group, many of whom were destined for the Auror department. Additionally, Ethan considered the presence of Death Eaters at the Quidditch World Cup as both a challenge and an opportunity. As the squad leader and an elite Auror, Tonks could proactively apply for the security detail at the World Cup, an opportunity too significant to miss. If handled correctly, the new Aurors could make a notable impact upon joining the ministry. With these thoughts, Ethan penned down the information and attached a phoenix feather to the letter. In a burst of flames, the feather vanished, reappearing on Gianna's desk with the letter. Ethan couldn't shake off his concern about the potential unrest among the Death Eaters at the World Cup. Despite Sorella's prowess, most of the group, including Penelo, were recent graduates with limited experience. Facing the ruthless Death Eaters would be a formidable challenge. Considering the threat posed by the Death Eaters, Ethan pondered whether they could perform at their peak and avoid accidental injuries. This led him to the conclusion that he needed to be better prepared. He decided to design a standardized uniform and equipment for the Aurors, intending to first create prototypes for Tonks, Sorella, and others to use. Once Tonks succeeded Scrimgeour as the head of the Auror office, Ethan planned to implement this gear as the standard equipment for all Aurors. Chapter 255. Ethan was determined to design Auror equipment, understanding that such a task should not be undertaken lightly. He reached out to Jaina and Tonks, requesting their assistance in gathering feedback from Aurors about their current equipment's shortcomings and their ideal requirements for Auror gear. Ethan was well aware that designing combat equipment, akin to firearms, helmets, and body armor, necessitated the input of those on the front lines. He knew that creating these items in isolation was far from ideal. The following morning, Ethan headed to the auditorium for breakfast as usual. The Owls arrived punctually, delivering various newspapers. Ethan noticed that nearly every paper prominently featured the murder of Mafalda Hopkirk and the related Ministry of Magic dismissal incident. The Daily Prophet's front page was dominated by a photo of Fudge, who appeared deeply saddened. He solemnly declared, "The Ministry of Magic will always adhere to its public service function, taking serving the public as its own duty, and serve all wizards wholeheartedly. We will use this as our purpose and invest more resources in public services." Fudge's promise to oppose corruption and his commitment to discipline and fairness were highlighted, using Hopkirk's dismissal as a cautionary tale. Despite the gravity of these events, Ethan found himself indifferent to Hopkirk's plight, believing that everyone must bear the consequences of their choices. His focus remained on the Book of All Laws, leaving him little time or energy to spare on unrelated matters. However, this did not mean his life lacked excitement. On the contrary, his ongoing explorations and research filled him with a sense of fun and achievement, especially as his work had the potential to transform magical civilization. Jaina and Tonks proved to be highly efficient, quickly gathering the information Ethan had requested. Upon completing his tasks for the day and returning to his dormitory, Ethan received their response via Helmer, his owl. Although Ethan, capable of transforming into a phoenix, found sending letters quite convenient, he still relied on Helmer for replies. Thanks to the demiplane's natural power, Helmer was far stronger than ordinary owls and handled tasks with ease. The documents from Jaina and Tonks were comprehensive, detailing the Auror's challenges and offering their suggestions. Tonks, with her frontline experience, provided practical advice. However, Jaina's proposal stood out for its simplicity and insight. The Auror uniform must meet one condition: it must be handsome. She argued that aesthetics could slightly outweigh protective performance and cost, believing that an attractive uniform would encourage young people to enlist. This perspective, though seemingly counterintuitive, was practical and echoed by an unnamed expert who affirmed the importance of designing military uniforms that appealed to young recruits. Ethan pondered over the summary of suggestions, appreciating the unique blend of practicality and aesthetics in the feedback. His project to design new Auror equipment was off to a promising start, fueled by the insights of those who would ultimately use it. Problems reported by Aurors indicate that they tend to select their equipment based on personal preferences and experiences when embarking on missions. This approach has led to Aurors excelling in individual combat due to their specialization in specific areas. However, this specialization comes at a cost. When alone, they shine like stars, but when together, their lack of coordination makes them less effective. Despite their formidable individual skills, their collective combat abilities fall short, especially when facing organized groups like Death Eaters. This is a stark contrast to Muggle armies, which rely on organization and discipline to overpower adversaries. To address these issues, Ethan plans to introduce concepts of circle magic and war magic in the Erudite Society's classes. His immediate focus, however, is on standardizing Auror equipment to foster teamwork and discipline akin to that of a Muggle army. In designing the uniforms, Ethan aims to balance practicality with aesthetics. He draws inspiration from other worlds, including a combat-ready Witcher suit. However, given that Aurors often operate in urban settings rather than battling monsters, Ethan opts for a more suitable attire inspired by the Assassin's Creed series. These uniforms are known for their stylish yet practical design, offering ease of movement in combat without standing out among civilians. The chosen template for standard Auror attire is based on the protagonist Arno's outfit from Assassin's Creed Unity, featuring a sleek black coat with a hood, a white vest, and a red shirt underneath, complemented by a red scarf, metal buckles, straps, and badges. This design deviates from traditional wizard robes, offering a more discreet and formidable appearance. For Auror officers, Ethan envisions a more elaborate uniform, drawing from Ezio's white assassin attire in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Remembering the impact of such a striking image, Ethan believes these uniforms should also serve to intimidate and command respect. To enhance stealth capabilities, Ethan enchants the coats with a fade spell, a less potent alternative to invisibility, allowing for temporary invisibility up to 3 times a day. Additionally, the uniforms are enchanted with featherfall, enabling Aurors to safely jump from heights at a moment's notice. To improve the fit and functionality of the uniforms, Ethan incorporates both inner and outer belts with drawstrings. Drawing from traditional Auror and alchemist belts, the inner belt features numerous buckles for attaching magical items and potions. Ethan also adds a flying spell to the belts, enabling Aurors to summon needed items directly to their hands in emergencies. This thoughtful design ensures that Aurors are not only well-equipped, but also maintain a cohesive and disciplined appearance, ready to face any challenge as a unified force. To enhance combat efficiency, Ethan incorporated a pair of slender, dragon skin gloves into the uniform, complemented by metal-wrapped forearms. Given the uniform's inspiration from Assassin's Creed, the inclusion of a hidden blade was a given. Ethan, however, opted for the sleeve staff he personally uses. After designing custom elf silver wand and sleeve staff sets for his companions, Ethan had a well-developed concept for the sleeve staff. The version he provided to the Aurors was the most basic, lacking an elf silver wand or a magic storage gem. It featured merely the fundamental wand ejection mechanism with an optional wand buckle chain to prevent disarmament spells. Ethan also selected a pair of dragon leather boots, enhancing them with thickened insoles to guard against puncture wounds from sharp objects. The boots' turned-over leg openings effectively prevented liquid penetration. Additionally, these boots were equipped with a silent portal enchantment, allowing for stealthy movement. Ethan paid meticulous attention to the specifications for both gloves and boots, ensuring optimal functionality. The only unprotected area remained the head, a significant vulnerability for Aurors on nocturnal missions. Facing the common threat of poison used by dark wizards, Ethan planned to design a protective mask. Drawing inspiration from the foolish debt collectors of Teyvat and the beak doctors of the Middle Ages, He envisioned a mask resembling a raven, with a pointed beak and two circular eye holes fitted with lenses to maintain clear vision. The mask's hollow section was to be filled with magical substances to filter out poisonous gases or magical toxins, and it would be enchanted with a slowing poison spell for added protection. The lenses, made from transparent glass, were designed for detection magic and low-light vision, functioning as a night vision device and allowing the wearer to see various magical illuminations. Lightweight and easily attachable to straps, the mask would not impede movement and offered comprehensive facial protection, enhancing Auror's detection capabilities and serving as a visual deterrent. However, Ethan's design didn't stop at combat attire. Auror's also required a range of equipment, including devices for communication. While Ethan couldn't imprint his own intellectual mark on the Aurors, he could enchant a badge with communication magic, similar to the communication silver coin used by Dumbledore's army. He designed this badge with a coat of arms resembling the Assassin's Creed logo, where the A stood not for assassin, but for Auror. This A-shaped emblem served not only as a communication device, but also as a symbol of the Aurors, appearing on various accessories like belt buckles. Additionally, Ethan considered other optional accessories, such as lenses for the mask with thermal vision and eagle eye capabilities, and a disguise technique for the mask, allowing it to alter the wearer's appearance without the need for polyjuice potion. He also suggested equipping Aurors with acid bottles and alchemical flame bottles as throwable grenades. Since the masks could effectively block poisonous gases, Aurors could be armed with non-lethal weapons like dung eggs and shock bombs enchanted with Thunder Wave, enabling them to incapacitate non-lethal targets and complete their missions without fatal outcomes. To minimize unnecessary casualties, Ethan's series of designs are not only aesthetically pleasing and practical, but also considerate of cost issues. Observing his entire set of equipment, it's evident that none required more than a single enchantment spell, showcasing the functional features of arcane magic effectively. The showcased uniform template is the Arnold tailor-made suit. As the new month arrives, I find myself seeking support in the form of customizations, appreciation, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have any votes to spare, please consider directing them my way as the author. Your support is truly important to me. Chapter 256. With the Assassin's Creed gem before him, Ethan completed the entire design with remarkable speed. It took him less than an hour to finish the drawings, measurements, and cost calculations. However, Ethan was well aware that theoretical plans often face challenges during practical implementation. Recognizing his lack of materials and skills, he decided it was best to create a few prototypes and test them to identify any practical shortcomings of his design. When considering candidates for modeling the prototypes, Ethan's first thought was of his female companions. In the Ravenclaw common room, he successfully found Zhang Chu and Luna. Upon understanding Ethan's request, Zhang Chu eagerly took Luna to the girls' bathroom for measurements. Ethan soon had their data. Although he could estimate their measurements through observation, actual measurements provided greater accuracy. However, he was mindful that these measurements would quickly become outdated due to the girls' growth spurts, rendering the clothes too small in as little as 6 months. Fortunately, the magical world offered solutions, and Ethan could use transformation magic for adjustments. After obtaining measurements from Zhang Chu and Luna, Ethan sought the physical data of Hermione, Cirilla, and Penelo, with a particular interest in Cirilla's. Cirilla and Penelo, being nearly adults, had body sizes that were more representative of adult Aurors. Moreover, as they were poised to join the Aurors after graduation, their feedback would be invaluable, especially Cirilla's. The female Witcher's prowess meant she could utilize the suit to its fullest potential and identify more issues. Ethan found Cirilla in the library, deeply engrossed in her studies for the ultimate wizard test. Upon learning of Ethan's request, Cirilla's eyes sparkled with determination. She quickly led Ethan to the 4th floor, not pausing for a moment, as if fearing hesitation might change their minds. Cirilla, upon seeing Ethan, immediately abandoned her book and followed him without a second thought. Understanding Ethan's purpose, Cirilla took his hand and used the man technique to transport them to the tower. The workroom was exactly as Ethan had left it. "Penelo isn't here, Ethan. Could you take my measurements?" Cyrilla asked straightforwardly. "You designed this equipment, and you know best what data is needed." The room was dimly lit, casting soft shadows. Ethan, with a slight nod, responded, "Please open your arms, Cyrilla," his voice barely above a whisper. Cyrilla removed her oversized magical robe and extended her arms gracefully. Ethan carefully hung her robe on the studio's inner door handle, ensuring privacy. Observing Cyrilla's elegant figure under the faint light, Ethan's expression softened. A long, silver-scaled tape measure materialized in his hand, reminiscent of the magical tape measures used by Ollivander and other wizarding clothiers. Ethan approached Cyrilla, his gaze lingering on her graceful form. He drew near, almost embracing her, and inhaled a faint scent of sage from behind her earlobe. Cyrilla was momentarily taken aback by Ethan's closeness, feeling a slight chill as his lips brushed her ear. The enchanted tape measure in Ethan's hand operated autonomously, wrapping around Cyrilla to take precise measurements without direct manipulation, much like those used in the wizarding world's finest shops. Ethan carefully controlled the magic tape measure to wrap around Cyrilla's back, then stepped back slightly to clearly see the numbers in front of him. Pressing one end of the tape measure with his fingertips, he memorized the numbers, but couldn't help noticing the astonishing softness of the tape measure. Ethan's gentle breath almost penetrated the thin layer of Cyrilla's summer clothes, the warmth of his breath as intense as the look in his eyes. Ethan extended the tape measure with his forearm, carefully measuring from the 0-degree longitude of Cyrilla's figure to 180 degrees. Cyrilla tried to remain calm, yet a throbbing in her heart and a whirlwind of strange feelings emerged. Ethan's gaze drifted to Cyrilla's waist. To facilitate the measurement, Cyrilla had removed her robe, revealing the contours of her body. Ethan's eyes followed the line of her waist down to the pronounced curves of her figure, feeling an impulse to use his hands and the magic tape measure to capture the high and low points of her form, aiming to design a perfectly fitting uniform. The process wasn't smooth at first, but the silver tape measure eventually did its job under Ethan's skilled handling and the influence of magic. The tape measure automatically started taking measurements on Cyrilla, from her fingers to her wrists, from her wrists to her elbows, and from her elbows to her armpits, then to her bust, waist, and hips. The series of measurements went smoothly, despite a minor mishap where a bottle was knocked over, wetting the table. However, measuring just the upper body wasn't enough. Ethan also needed to design pants, so he measured from the bottom up, starting with Cyrilla's feet and moving up to her ankles, calves, and thighs. The magic tape measure quickly captured all the necessary data of Cyrilla's legs. "Would you like to continue with the measurements?" Ethan asked Cyrilla, noticing her standing with some numbness in her legs. "Are you feeling unsteady?" "Of course, let's continue," Cyrilla responded, determined. Despite the tediousness of the measurements, she felt she could endure it. Ethan then took another comprehensive measurement, leaving Cyrilla completely drained, like a puppet, as the magic tape measure meticulously recorded every joint and muscle detail. When the final measurement was taken, Cyrilla, unable to resist, playfully bit Ethan's shoulder. "Cyrilla, are you a puppy?" Ethan joked, stroking the teeth marks she left. Cyrilla, lying on the long table, narrowed her gray-green eyes and propped up her upper body with her elbows, giving Ethan a mischievous and provocative smile. Suddenly, she leaned forward, making Ethan think she was about to take more measurements. Instead, he felt a slight sting, paused for a moment, and then laughed off the playful attack. Cyrilla cast a provocative glance at Ethan, turned over, and jumped off the table. She quickly entered the bathroom, and after cleaning up, her every move radiated vitality. True to her nature as a female witcher, she had regained her strength in just half an hour, able to run and jump with ease. Cyrilla retrieved her robe from the doorknob, blew Ethan a kiss, and left gracefully, her departure as lively as her entrance. She still had numerous books to read and a plethora of tasks to complete. "Remember to send me Penelo's data too," Ethan reminded her before she left. Unlike her, Ethan didn't leave immediately. Instead, he waved goodbye, offered a smile, and then proceeded to clear the long table of the blood-stained tablecloth. Afterward, he began crafting sample garments based on her measurements. The design he chose was inspired by the captain's clothing template, Ezio. Chapter 257. As is widely recognized, the production and daily life of Muggles heavily rely on specialization and division of labor. For instance, the creation of a complete piece of clothing involves multiple steps, from weaving the fabric, sewing, smelting, and producing buttons, to forging, leather tanning, and finally assembling the garment. These steps depend on various factories and workers, making it nearly impossible for a single person to master and complete all these tasks. However, with the aid of magic, Ethan made this a reality. He not only completed all the aforementioned tasks by himself, but also crafted a full set of uniforms for Cirilla, including belts, straps, gloves, boots, scarves, masks, and other accessories, and even completed the enchanting work. After manufacturing, Ethan calculated the cost. Considering only the material expenses, the uniform and its components amounted to nearly 150 galleons. Including the enchantment costs, the price soared to 500 galleons. Factoring in labor and miscellaneous expenses, the total cost reached 600 galleons, which was quite reasonable. For Muggles, this set of equipment would be categorized as military gear. Thus, a market price of 1,000 or even 2,000 galleons would not be surprising. This price could cover an Auror's salary for over half a year, but given that this equipment is designed to save lives, its high cost is justified. Those who find it expensive should consider the equipment used by the American military, where a set including a helmet, backpack, body armor, and night vision goggles can sell for between 85 and 32 cents and $30,000. Once the equipment was ready, Ethan invited Cirilla to test it. Cirilla, being a formidable female witcher, had the perfect physique and skills for this uniform. Her heroic appearance made her resemble a female assassin navigating through a steel jungle. In terms of handsomeness, the uniform fully met the expectations. The next phase was the actual combat test. At Ethan's request, Cirilla performed a series of tactical action tests, including high-intensity activities such as somersaults, rolls, high leg raises, side kicks, and back-and-forth running. These tests aimed to evaluate the uniform's mobility, and except for a few minor adjustments, the outcome was highly successful. Given that the prototype was designed for assassins, it was naturally suited for a demon hunter like Cirilla. If Ethan's uniform could meet the physical demands of a female witcher, it would undoubtedly satisfy a group of Aurors. After all, no matter how intense Auror battles might be, they couldn't surpass the combat style of a demon warrior like Cirilla, who truly fought with her sword, unlike Aurors who primarily relied on their wands. The functional test followed. Cirilla was tasked with completing a series of challenges set by Ethan, including but not limited to jumping from the top of Ravenclaw Tower in a leap of faith, sneaking into Hogwarts in the middle of the night using only her uniform to retrieve a book from the restricted section of the library, navigating a corridor filled with dung bombs, clearly observing the Ethan pendulum in a dimly lit room, a room engulfed in thick fog and from 1,000 meters away, and impersonating Penello to deceive Percy Weasley. After this comprehensive series of tests, Ethan concluded that the uniform's functionality was successful in all aspects, requiring only minor adjustments before official deployment. Therefore, Ethan made several copies of the design, along with the sample clothes and Cirilla's physical data, and sent them all to Gianna. Soon after, Ethan received a positive response. However, Gianna was not prepared to immediately issue this equipment to all Aurors. Despite the uniform's excellence, there was one significant drawback: their high cost. Jaina's plan was ambitious. She intended to use the department's funds to acquire advanced equipment for a select group of Aurors under Tonk's command. If necessary, she was even prepared to finance the shortfall personally. Her strategy aimed to transform Tonk's team into a paragon among the Aurors, thereby swiftly consolidating her influence. However, this endeavor demanded not only top-notch equipment, but also a solid reputation to back it up. It was Ethan's insights about the World Cup finals that inspired her to hatch this plan, and Ethan was fully supportive of it. Turning to the Quidditch World Cup, the second round of the Hogwarts Quidditch Cup had concluded, featuring a match between Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff, often considered the underdog at Hogwarts, struggled against the might of Ravenclaw, which boasted 3 firebolts, 2 exceptionally talented players, and comprehensive tactical training. The disparity in strength was evident as Ravenclaw triumphed with a significant margin, leaving Hufflepuff with a solitary goal to their name. The defeat was so crushing that Hufflepuff's captain, Cedric Diggory, was moved to tears on the pitch. As May approached, signaling the nearing end of the Hogwarts Quidditch Cup, anticipation built for the upcoming match between Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Despite Ravenclaw's insurmountable lead in total points, making a Slytherin victory unlikely, the match was to proceed. This game would also be the last opportunity for Hamish McFarlane, the leader of the Yin Kingdom team, to scout players at Hogwarts. Ethan, in a display of confidence, announced that Ravenclaw would not rely on their firebolts for this match, opting instead to confront Slytherin with pure skill. Given Ravenclaw's substantial lead and Ethan's well-established reputation, his decision was met with no objections from his teammates. On the eve of the match, Professor McGonagall sought Ethan out with a question. "Ethan, do you recall our previous conversation about registering a Quidditch tactical maneuver with the International Federation of Wizards and the Quidditch Committee?" Ethan remembered well. In Ravenclaw's last match against Gryffindor, he had executed a complex broomstick evasion maneuver, evading his opponent's encirclement with both flair and practicality. Professor McGonagall had submitted it for official recognition and naming. Ethan had been awaiting the outcome, concerned that the delay might cause him to miss McFarlane's final selection. To Ethan's relief, Professor McGonagall brought encouraging news. "They've agreed to register the maneuver, but it wasn't just representatives from the Quidditch Association who came," she hinted. "The head of the Department of Magical Games and Sports at the Ministry of Magic, Ludo Bagman, right?" Ethan interjected, surprising McGonagall with his knowledge. "How did you know?" she asked, taken aback. "I have my sources," Ethan replied with a smile, acknowledging the information he received from Onyxia and Tonks. Professor McGonagall, impressed by Ethan's well-connectedness, mentioned that Bagman was currently in a meeting with Professor Dumbledore. She playfully suggested Ethan guess the topic of their discussion. After a moment's thought, Ethan ventured, "Could it be about the Triwizard Tournament?" Professor McGonagall was astonished by his accurate guess. "How did you know?" "The last Triwizard Tournament was held 200 years ago, and despite numerous attempts to revive it, all had failed until now. I only just learned this from Dumbledore." The Triwizard Tournament was successfully held in the original work. Of course, Ethan wouldn't disclose this to Professor McGonagall directly. Instead, he offered her a mysterious smile and said, "A secret makes a man." Professor McGonagall didn't respond directly to his comment, but instead remarked, "I suppose this is something your friend at the Ministry of Magic told you." Chapter 258. The Triwizard Tournament is still under discussion, and it has not yet been determined whether it can be resumed. You must remember to keep it a secret, Professor McGonagall warned softly. Ethan nodded in agreement. "One more thing, Ludo, as the director of the sports department and a member of the association, will check your movements in the afternoon and then register." Speaking of Quidditch, Professor McGonagall's tone became excited. "Of course, this is just a formality," she added. Ethan responded without being too worried. Regardless of whether it's a formality or not, he can perfectly execute this operation with his ability. "And one more thing," Professor McGonagall lowered her voice and looked extremely serious. Ethan suppressed his impatience and looked at the professor seriously. "If Ludo asks you to join the Wimborne Wasps, don't say yes. This is no longer the era when Ludo played. This club has long declined and has no future." The Wimborne Wasps, founded in 1312 and headquartered in the town of Wimborne in the western region, wear yellow and black robes with horizontal stripes and a wasp on the chest. This team has had its moments of glory, winning the championship 18 times, becoming UEFA Cup champions, and reaching the European Cup semifinals twice. Ludo was the star of this team, helping them win 3 consecutive British League Cups, and also played for the national team. However, as Professor McGonagall mentioned, the team has long since declined. Victory and defeat are common in sports, and it's normal for team performance to fluctuate. Even the famous teams have faced declines. Ethan has no intention of joining any Quidditch club. His participation in the Quidditch World Cup aims to increase his fame and give his Quidditch career a perfect ending. After that, he plans to focus on fighting Voldemort, or more accurately, use the fight against Voldemort as an excuse to expand his own power and establish a new order in the magical world. At that point, his identity will not be suitable for participating in sports, so it's better to make the most of it now, which can also be considered a perfect experience with Cirilla. If he still enjoys Quidditch later, he can simply buy a club and become the owner. In this regard, he can follow the examples of the owners who invested in Chelsea and Manchester City. If he wants the team to perform well, he can follow a simple mantra: invest money. If a player is good, try to acquire them. If that's not possible, it means not enough galleons were offered. But with the Philosopher's Stone, Ethan will never be short of galleons. He can even have the savior, Harry, look for players for him. What a great idea. Before leaving, Professor McGonagall kindly reminded him, one more thing, Ludo Bagman is a complete gambler and owes a lot of debt because of it, so don't gamble with him. Ethan naturally agreed. As a responsible student at Hogwarts, he steered clear of gambling and drugs. Under the noon sun, Ludo Bagman appeared in the auditorium like a celebrated hero, receiving unanimous applause from the young wizards. His name is well known in the British wizarding world, holding a legendary status. He is considered the most outstanding batsman in the history of the Wimborne Wasps, and his skills once led the national team to the World Cup stage. Bulgaria's Crumb was praised by the Daily Prophet as the contemporary Ludo Bagman, a testament to Ludo's historical status in British Quidditch and his extraordinary influence at the time. Ethan could easily rank among the top 5 British Quidditch players, with his ardent fans often boldly proclaiming, "Sit back and watch." However, his career was marred by one significant flaw. He had never won the Quidditch World Cup. This absence greatly impacted his historical standing, leading to rumors of a potential comeback. There was a prevailing belief that whoever could lead the British Quidditch team to World Cup victory would be hailed as the savior of the new generation. Winning the championship was deemed a more daunting task than defeating Voldemort, as, in the public's eye, Voldemort was already defeated, whereas the British team was still far from victory. Thus, being dubbed the contemporary Ludo Bagman was not entirely a compliment, but rather a curse, highlighting Ludo's failure to secure a World Cup championship in his lifetime. This raised concerns about Ethan's potential to share a similar fate, especially since Bulgaria did not win the championship in the original timeline until 2014, when Krum was a 38-year-old veteran. The Triwizard Tournament also warranted discussion, particularly involving Barty Crouch Sr., the Minister of the International Magic Exchange and Cooperation Department. He and Ludo were expected to co-organize this multi-country event. However, Ethan knew that Barty Crouch Sr. was preoccupied with the World Cup venue construction and could not devote attention to the campus event. His involvement was a result of being sidelined by Fudge and Gianna, who saw the Quidditch security task as thankless. Fudge, seeking to avoid responsibility for any potential issues, was keen to delegate this task to his political rival, Barty. Similarly, Gianna, aware of the Death Eater's expected presence at the World Cup, preferred to pass this problematic task to a political opponent. After a meal, Ludo, having gained weight and sporting a tight robe over his belly, called Ethan to the Quidditch pitch, followed by a group of eager young wizards. Ludo's appearance, with his flat nose, round blue eyes, short blonde hair, and rosy complexion, gave him the look of an oversized boy. As they walked, Ludo, with a spring in his step, inquired about Ethan's relationship with Deputy Director Gianna Proudmoore, a prominent figure in the Ministry of Magic. Ethan confirmed their close relationship, having bonded over a conversation at the Order of Merlin Medal Award ceremony. Ludo, impressed by Ethan's achievements and his partnership with Miss Sorella, another medalist, expressed support for Ethan's potential recruitment to the British national team, comparing his talent favorably, even to Crumb's. He mentioned that Hamish had been observing Ethan's performances, indicating a strong interest in having him join the national team, much like Bulgaria's recruitment of Crumb. Ludo Bagman revealed the inside information to Ethan with a smile, unaware that Tonks had facilitated Hamish McFarlane's inspection. Ethan was convinced that Ludo had never personally witnessed his game. His so-called optimism and support seemed solely aimed at currying favor with Gianna. It was clear that Barty Crouch Sr. was the official, most closely cooperating with him at the moment. Upon reflection, Ethan considered that Ludo's actions might be motivated by a desire to align with him, pondering where Barty Crouch drew the line. As a close collaborator, Ludo might have realized that things were not looking good for old Barty. From this angle, the former star player had transformed into a full-fledged politician, primarily concerned with money and profit. Ethan was not fond of such individuals, yet he had to acknowledge that with Ludo's presence, it was almost guaranteed that he and Cirilla would be selected for the Yin Kingdom national team. Despite Ludo's efforts, he was the actual director of the Department of Magical Sports and the boss of the national team leader, Hamish. Officially, he ranked above Gianna, ensuring a level of safety for Ethan and Cirilla's selection. Chapter 259. Professor McGonagall indeed overthought the situation. Ludo Bagman did not bring up the Hornets or anything related to gambling with Ethan. She had underestimated Jaina's influence within the Ministry of Magic, and Ludo's demeanor towards her was almost obsequious. How could he possibly entangle Ethan in the intricate web of the wasps, let alone involve him in gambling? If Ethan were to lose money, it would undermine all his efforts. However, this oversight wasn't entirely Professor McGonagall's fault. Professors are primarily tasked with teaching and educating, so it's understandable that they might not be well versed in political machinations. Yet she was correct about one aspect. Ludo's examination of Ethan was merely a formality. He didn't insist on recreating the scene or having multiple people challenge Ethan again, a step that, by the rules, should have been essential. Ludo was prepared to let Ethan pass, even if it took him 10 or 20 attempts to replicate his performance just once. Then, Ludo witnessed Ethan's flying skills firsthand. He observed Ethan effortlessly leap onto the firebolt, which was speeding through the air, and catch it perfectly. The precision with which Ethan controlled the broom left him astounded. If we had such a player in the Yin Kingdom back then, things might have been different, Ludo thought to himself after witnessing Ethan's prowess. He then resolved to do everything in his power to encourage Ethan to join the Yin Kingdom national team. With Ethan as their secret weapon, the team's performance in the World Cup could surpass all expectations. Despite the prevailing optimism for the Irish team among most in the Yin Kingdom, the underestimation of their own team could work in their favor. Ludo saw this as an opportunity not just to clear his gambling debts, but also to potentially make a fortune. As Ethan left the field, he couldn't help but notice Ludo's intense gaze. Nevertheless, Ethan's registration of the maneuver was successful. The detailed explanation of Quidditch maneuvers published by the Quidditch Committee would now feature a new tactic named the Grim Pass. However, this maneuver, which Ethan executed using his psychic powers to control the broom, would be nearly impossible for other players to replicate without the use of magic. This move was destined to become a legendary feat in Quidditch history. The next day, the auditorium was packed early in the morning, with everyone eagerly anticipating the upcoming game. The question on everyone's lips was whether Ethan would use a firebolt. This concern was shared not just by the anxious Slytherins, but also by Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs. Both houses admired Ethan's sense of fairness and courage. However, the Gryffindors hoped Ethan would use the firebolt, as Harry also owned one. They wondered how they could justify using firebolts to gain an advantage over other teams if Ethan chose to forgo his. Most Slytherins, on the other hand, believed Ethan would not abandon the firebolt, convinced that victory was paramount and unable to comprehend the notion of relinquishing an advantage. Yet, when Ethan, Cirilla, and Chujang, along with their Ravenclaw teammates, entered the field holding Nimbus 2001s, the crowd erupted in applause. Regardless of their prior speculations, witnessing the three Ravenclaws opt for fairness and justice by choosing not to use the firebolt garnered them widespread admiration. During the game, everyone showed sincere admiration for the trio, including Slater Lynn, who stood up and cheered for Ethan. Their perspective differed from that of other houses. To the Slytherins, the Ravenclaws must possess absolute confidence in their abilities to dare participate in such a competition. Indeed, they were correct. For Ethan, ensuring the competition's fairness and justice was paramount. He believed that everyone should compete based on their strength, as this was the only way to truly demonstrate their capabilities. The two captains shook hands, announced Miss Hooch. Roger and Flint exchanged handshakes. Although their gestures appeared peaceful, their eyes betrayed a deep desire for victory. "Mount your broomsticks," commanded Miss Hooch. 3, 2, 1. Her whistle was lost amidst the audience's cheers as 14 broomsticks ascended into the sky. At the game's outset, Slytherin's captain, Flint, mocked Ethan and his team for not recognizing their limitations. He was confident in their physical strength to secure a win as they had in the past. However, he soon realized that their opponents had evolved. Previously, Ravenclaw relied heavily on Ethan and Cirilla to counter Slytherin's aggressive tactics. But after Ethan's rigorous training, the team adopted a new strategy in response to Slytherin's physical play. They focused on evasion and executed Ethan's run-and-gun tactics flawlessly. The broomsticks were always in motion, never pausing. Roger, upon receiving the quaffle, would immediately pass it, denying the opposition any chance to intercept. The beaters circulated the bludger strategically, ensuring the opponent's beaters couldn't make contact. This approach rendered Slytherin's tactics ineffective, exposing their lack of agility. Only 20 minutes into the game, the Slytherins were visibly exhausted, yet they had failed to make any significant impact. Their formation was dismantled by Ravenclaw's relentless run-and-gun strategy, leaving their defense riddled with gaps. "Score, 50-0, announced Mrs. Hooch, as Ravenclaw scored once again. Flint, unable to contain his frustration, commanded his team to intensify their attack. Despite Ravenclaw's unpredictable offense, they stood firm in defense. Even the Seeker, Zhang Chu, participated in defensive efforts. Flint, underestimating Zhang Chu, attempted to break through her defense but was nearly knocked off his broomstick. Zhang Chu, one of Ethan's closest allies, had consumed a permanent elixir, enhancing her abilities. Slytherin's prolonged inability to score forced them into a rushed attempt, which was swiftly intercepted by goalkeeper Grant Page. Without hesitation, Page launched the quaffle towards Slytherin's half. Ethan Green, who had been focusing on defense, was already positioned to receive the quaffle. With Slytherin's players still regrouping, Ethan faced a clear path to the goal. Slytherin's goalkeeper, Miles Black, attempted to intercept but was effortlessly bypassed by Ethan, who scored an unchallenged goal. The remainder of the game was a nightmare for Slytherin. Ravenclaw dominated, achieving a staggering victory of 190-50, even without resorting to using firebolts, before Zhang Chu secured the final catch. The golden snitch was securely caught by Ethan. Following this, the crowd in the stands erupted like a tidal wave, and the cheers of the young wizards filled the entire stadium, creating a frenzy of excitement. Mrs. Hooch blew her silver whistle, signaling the end of the match. Ravenclaw dominated the field with an overwhelming victory. This dominance was evident in every aspect, from the dazzling display of individual skills and the strategic layout of the team's tactics to the seamless unity and cooperation among the team members. In this match, the Ravenclaw Wizards pushed their abilities to the limit. On the field, they were like warriors in battle, using every move and every shout to celebrate their hard-earned victory. Their voices were hoarse from shouting, yet their inner joy and pride were unmistakable. "We've won the cup with a perfect record again. We've won the cup with a perfect record again," Roger exclaimed as he received the huge Quidditch cup from Dumbledore. Tears blurred his vision, and he was too overwhelmed to speak. He knew deep down that he lacked the talent and strength to join a professional club after graduation. Perhaps this was indeed his last official game. Yet it was the glory of this moment that filled him with an unparalleled sense of happiness and pride. Chapter 260. There was no doubt about the match. The strength of the two young wizards recommended by Tonks was impressive. Hamish McFarlane, observing from the audience, admired Ethan and Cirilla, who were mingling with other young wizards. Have you decided yet? He asked Ludo Bagman. Yes, it's them. Despite their youth, their prowess, teamwork, and strategic thinking are exceptional. They won't need much training, just to gel with the team. I couldn't find more suitable candidates in such a short time, Hamish explained to his superior, earning a hearty laugh and a clap from Ludo. Hamish, you've made the right choice. Albus, with the competition starting this summer, could you allow these two young wizards to join our training directly? Hamish inquired of Dumbledore beneath the award podium. Sorry, Hamish. As the headmaster, I can't make decisions for them. You should ask for their opinions. Dumbledore responded, his eyes twinkling. He was, in fact, supportive of Ethan's participation in the World Cup, hoping it might divert the boy from his fascination with dark magic. In the locker room, Ethan and Cyrilla were approached by Hamish, an encounter Ethan had anticipated since meeting Ludo Bagman. Ethan was concerned that Hamish might disapprove of him due to Ludo's premature intervention. However, it appeared the national team's coach was more impressed with him than expected. The World Cup is this summer, and the Yin Kingdom's team has 2 openings for chasers. I'll be direct, Mr. Green and Miss Leonlun. I hope you'll join the Yin national team and represent our country, Hamish stated plainly. Ethan accepted without a moment's hesitation, and after a brief glance at him, Cyrilla nodded in agreement. Opportunities like this were rare and should be seized without pretense. I hope you two will temporarily set aside your studies to join our training, Hamish said, his gaze fixed on Ethan, clearly seeing him as the decision-maker of the duo. To his surprise, Ethan shook his head. Coach, we wish to continue our studies at Hogwarts. Cyrilla needs to prepare for her NFTs, and I have commitments that prevent me from leaving school for an extended period. Hamish was taken aback, not expecting Ethan to prioritize education over training with renowned stars. Hogwarts is quite distant from our training location. Traveling by train would be time-consuming. You needn't worry. We can apparate, Ethan replied calmly, unfazed by Hamish's intense scrutiny. Perhaps you should reconsider. Aren't you concerned about missing this opportunity? Hamish asked before leaving. Losing me will only be his regret, Ethan replied confidently to Professor Dumbledore, who was once again surprised by the young wizard's resolve. After hearing about the conversation, Ludo Bagman quickly sought out Hamish to discuss the matter, eventually persuading him. Then, he approached Dumbledore with a request. Albus, I have a favor to ask, Ludo said to Dumbledore. Please, go ahead, Ludo. Ludo Bagman said, the national Quidditch team can have closed training at Hogwarts. When testing Ethan yesterday, he thoroughly inspected the Quidditch pitch at Hogwarts. The facilities are very comprehensive, and with his expertise, they can fully meet the needs of standard training. Additional equipment can be arranged if necessary. If that's not enough, he could also request funding approval from the sports department. After all, as the director, it wouldn't take much effort. He observed the entire game today and believes that Ethan, aside from his remarkable skills, possesses enough talent to stand out in the World Cup. His partnership with Cyrilla is not just a step for him to get closer to Deputy Director Jaina, but also a golden opportunity for a significant comeback. Therefore, he couldn't let them leave. Dumbledore, looking from Ethan to Ludo Bagman, agreed without hesitation. Of course, Ludo. Our Quidditch season has ended, and the training ground is entirely at your disposal. Dumbledore thought to himself that this could be an excellent opportunity to steer Ethan away from dark magic. He increasingly saw Ethan as an exceptional wizard whose talent far surpassed his peers. Dumbledore had encountered 2 such individuals before, both of whom had succumbed to darkness. Thank you very much, Dumbledore. Ludo expressed his gratitude profusely before turning to find Hamish McFarlane. Soon after, Hamish returned to the lounge, his gaze filled with complex emotions as he looked at Ethan and Cyrilla. The World Cup leader hadn't anticipated such a complicated relationship between the 2 young wizards, one that could make the usually shrewd Director Ludo so content. Fortunately, their talents were genuine, or else he would be in a difficult position. Mr. Ethan, Miss Cyrilla Leanne, I now officially extend an invitation to you as the General Manager and Coach of the England National Quidditch Team. Would you be willing to join as a chaser for the national team? Certainly, I do. Their responses were simple, but Ethan felt a wave of excitement. He glanced at the girl beside him, Cirilla, who shared his excitement. Participating in a more significant game was truly thrilling. That's the allure of competitive sports. This is indeed a cause for celebration. Congratulations, Ethan and Cirilla, Ludo Bagman clapped enthusiastically. I hope you can help your team have great results. Dumbledore also patted Ethan's shoulder kindly, offering encouragement. The Ravenclaw players gathered around to congratulate him. Roger's envious gaze seemed to pierce Ethan. Participating in the World Cup had been his childhood dream, and now he could only watch Ethan and the others live it out. Thank you all. Ethan and Cirilla were overjoyed. In this moment of joy, it felt incredibly warm to have others to share it with and to receive timely congratulations. The formal invitation letter will be sent to you tomorrow, Hamish finally reminded. We've arranged for the sports department to accommodate the other team members in Hogsmeade, and they will only come here for training. Dumbledore, thank you. Ludo thanked the headmaster again before he and Hamish hurried off. They had many tasks to handle and numerous people to contact. Especially for Hamish, as the team leader, the sudden change in training venue required extensive coordination, communication, and organizational work. The leader speaks and the subordinates hustle. Such is the case everywhere. Update 5 Force, additional update 59. The new month is upon us, and I'm reaching out for your support. Subscriptions, likes, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have any votes, please consider giving them to me as the author. Your support is incredibly important to me.